Let's go ahead and call this budget hearing to order. If we could all, good morning, if we could all stand for the pledge of allegiance. Salute to the state flag. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic which stands one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Salute to the flag of the state of New Mexico. Thank you. Next item, just the budget hearing.
Start with just call the departments up their requests and just interact and ask any questions.
Looking on here, so I'm just going to read this part. During this portion of our meeting, we welcome the budget request presentations for the fiscal year 2019-2020 preliminary budget and any suggestions or concerns. Speakers will be limited to five minutes. So if we can have first item is going to be item 8, maintenance department.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. So for the maintenance this year, for the 1920 fiscal year, looks basically pretty much flat with the only exception in the capital outlay. We added $165,000 in there for the FBO roof. It's in pretty bad shape, so we're trying to get that money for there. Other than that, the other line items. What's that?
I'm sorry, will you please repeat that?
I'm sorry. So the basically pretty much a flat budget, except for the capital outlay. That line item, we increased it by $165,000 for the roof at the FBO office. So
FBO office.
yeah, that's the where they do the fueling and the fuel-based operators are out there.
Fuel-based operator,
Mhm.
okay. Yeah.
Yes.
All right. That's why I didn't hear it the first time, because you said FBO office, and I was like, what in the world is that?
Yes.
Okay.
And other than that, the other line items down below is just insurance adjustments. Telephone had an increase, but we kind of hit or miss with that on certain years, just depends.
And so the $165,000 is capital outlay that you've already got on the ICIP, or you're getting it on the ICIP for next year?
So it will be coming on the ICIP for next year.
Okay.
Yes, but we just threw that in there to see if there was any extra money, since we're doing the renovations out there at the terminal as well.
Okay, and they're not, the FBO building is not covered by the other renovations?
That's correct.
Okay.
Question, Jason, in your budget, is there any money for the fairgrounds or Baton?
We just have maintenance improvements in there for anything that breaks down. It's kind of covered for all of the facilities. So all of our facilities is good.
Okay.
And so your budget as the maintenance department would not include necessarily improvements to something like Baton Park, for example?
Correct.
It would only include maintenance of those improvements in the future or something like that?
That's correct. So when things break down, or vandalism, anything like that, we try to take care of it pretty quick.
Were you able to get any additional information on the porta potties out at the...
I have not yet at this point.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, I was just going to mention that something like improvements at Baton Park, we would budget that in a capital improvements fund rather than in a general fund, so that we can track that as capital improvement and adds on to our inventory and for depreciation purposes, et cetera.
That's all I have.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on to B, Clerk's Department.
It looks like pretty much what Bruce has to request. One thing that I would like to request is, one of the requests was that my recording specialist, Robert, I'm requesting a small increase. When they did the new salary changes, he ended up falling in the very low mid-range of where he should really be being paid. He does have definitely the experience to get close to the point. Sorry. He does have the experience, and I feel that we should at least bring him up to at least the mid of what the salary range should be. Again, the salary range was new when everything kind of switched up a little bit, and when it happened, he ended up at the very low end. At this point, if to put him at mid-range, that would be $1.03 increase in his pay. He is pretty, he's of course very valuable to the office in that position. He does bring a lot of experience and at least should be at minimum. That's just one of the requests that I'd really like to be looked at.
So is that request
It was made,
already built in here?
was it put in, I'm sorry, Linda, was that put in? I was requesting a slight increase for Robert's position, and I know that it was...
It's not the recommended.
Okay.
The difference in the recommended is due to the new position that happened. That was actually budgeted at a lower rate last year, but it was under a different classification. So with the change in the classification that we did a couple of years ago, it increased that. But since that position was vacant, we never really actually saw that number.
Okay. And for the position, for the increase for Robert, was that input, I know that we...
It's part of your requested
It's in the request. It is definitely in the request.
So the recommended would have to go up by something like 2,000 plus benefits,
Yes.
if we're talking about $1 per hour.
Yes.
And you, by figuring, I think it's $1.03, it just puts them right at minimum range. And
Minimum or mid?
at the mid, I'm sorry, at the mid. Personally, he should really be at the high end, and again, we can justify it because he has, 10 plus years experience, and he does actually have a lot of responsibilities and, within, and can, does definitely make a difference. Again, the only reason that he did come in at that rate, it's the salary rate for everything was kind of new when all the changes were made, and at the classification that he was put in, he should have been put in at least minimum range. He's really under what he should be.
Mr. Chair?
I'm sorry? At mid, I'm sorry, yes, at the mid.
This raises, I think, a question that goes across many departments, not just the clerk's department. And I wonder if you could remind us, when we adopted the classification plan, we also said we wanted everybody brought up to minimum, and that was done, as I recall, last year. Was there a next step where our goal was to bring people to midpoint?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, yes, that is the goal of the plan overall, but of course it depends on our fiscal capacity to be able to do that, but the goal is to bring everyone to the mid-range if possible, but then again, we have to have the money. I have a little bit of frustration with how Rob was handled. I think he should have been brought in, and that's what I continue to express to department heads, elected officials, that that was one of the reasons for developing the plan and some of the methodology behind it. If someone has the experience, stop punishing them for their years of experience by starting them at the minimum, the same as anyone who has 0 experience. This is a perfect example of where we could have plugged him in I don't know if it was a budgetary issue or what, but this is just an example of not using the tools that we have to the full extent.
So back to the general, not the, focus on one employee. Have we calculated what it would cost to bring folks to the mid-range?
We did, whenever we implemented the plan. I don't remember what that cost was.
Okay.
But I can get that calculation for you.
So that was going to be my question as well. So I would like to see what that calculation is so that we could, potentially form a plan around, we may not be able to get everybody at mid, this year kind of thing, but have some kind of plan.
Yeah.
To do that.
I'm much more comfortable doing it systematically, where it's across the board. We've paid for this study, we did the study, now we're implementing it, rather than identifying individuals, because I know other departments have brought up similar concerns.
It's happening in more than just this department. I get excuses, it's a morale issue, it's this, it's that, but it's also a morale issue for that person who
Right.
has, put in years of experience with another agency, and then we treat them no differently than someone off the street with zero experience.
Right.
So that's just an example of how we're not using it to its full capacity. If we were using it like that, then we would be much closer to being at that mid-range, which
Yeah.
was the overarching goal of the plan when we adopted it.
I guess since we're on this topic, and it will come up in a future department, I'm sure, is there not only a chance to evaluate, the cost of bringing everybody to the mid-range, but also to give department heads a chance to shift the steps that certain employees are on? Like, is there a process where they can say, we need to reevaluate the way this was assigned to a given position?
We will be doing a market analysis update in the next fiscal year, because I need some money.
Okay.
I don't have time to do it on my own, neither does Renee. And it is an extensive amount of gathering data, so we will be looking at that. One of the things that we will also incorporate in that process is if they feel that job duties have changed and that they want positions to be reevaluated specifically around what the job duties are, then they will be required to complete the PDQ, which is outlines what do they do, what's changed, and so then we can look and compare to what the market says that position should pay. And that's looking at other governmental agencies, whether it be cities, obviously counties. We do also look at the public market if there's a comparable position, which very few are, but we do compare a lot of clerical to the public market.
And when is that taking place? You said next
I
year?
will have to do it in the next fiscal year.
Meaning not until
July.
July 1 of 2020 or July 1 of 2019?
2019.
Oh, good. The coming fiscal, the one we're talking about. There's money in here to contract for that?
I'm going to try to scrape up some money to at least get it started, but the end of this budget's looking a little tight, in my opinion, so I have to make up my mind by tomorrow, because that's when Rand's cutting us off on POs, but I would like to get it started and maybe split the costs, but we are going to do it fairly and equitably.
Great. Well, I'm glad it's sooner rather than later, so thanks.
No, I'm not waiting until 2020.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Pretty much that's it, and actually, I'd really like to thank Linda and Charlene. They've been very helpful, with questions. Linda's taken time out. I did have a lot of questions, and, we went through all the numbers and just kind of, obviously, what we really, really needed, but they were both very receptive and understanding and listened to what we were needing, so thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? Okay. So back to you for Bureau of Elections.
Bureau of Elections, the recommended and everything pretty much falls in place, so I think we're okay with everything that has been presented. It did change a little bit. There's a lot of new laws that changed, and we're not sure how that's going to affect.
So Linda, really took some time to look at it, and we kind of guesstimated as to what was going to happen. So next year, it may change, and, we can explain as to why, if there's a big shift.
Thank you. Because I know there's a lot of changes that we're probably just gonna have to sit back, play by ear till they hit us.
Yeah, and that's kind of where we're at, because we're really not sure, what to fully expect.
Question, so, you need 25,000 for the special elections, right?
Right.
So on the budget, where's that reflected? That's
So-
the salaries or what?
So, it is it should be, 05, what is it, 5018. 40105, 5018.
Okay, so,
Special election.
oh, okay. I got you.
And in some cases, you charge, or you're able to charge an agency for having a special election, right?
So the way things have changed a little bit, so special elections are going to be done differently. We are now, what we have is the election law has changed. Now, special elections have to be paid completely out by the agency requesting that. We have to pay up front, and then they have to actually pay it back.
So shouldn't there be some income in the general fund reflected? Like if you're going to budget for a special election, shouldn't we also budget the income that you would get from that agency?
That, I'm not sure, Linda.
There should be, but in the previous, it's only been about 3,500, and that's what we guesstimated.
Yeah, I think the previous isn't a good model since
Yeah,
things have
well, that
changed.
was, like Marisa said, she doesn't really know what to expect.
Sure. I'm fine as long as it's internally consistent, right? We don't budget anything either way, or we budget for an election, but we budget both
And
pieces
I
of
don't
it.
even know, because I think the question was asked if we would be getting reimbursed for some of the elections. And I don't think at the time when I asked you, you were quite sure if we were going to. So, I mean, I agree with you that if we're going to be holding special elections, that we should get some type of reimbursement, but I don't know if they're going to put that full responsibility on the counties as far as that goes. So,
And at this point, it looks like, if, depending on whatever agency it is, they will be responsible for paying for that special election, which will be an all mail-out special election. One of the changes is that even the postage for the ballots gets paid for. And that's by the requesting agency, yes. So postage out, postage in, that can run anywhere between, like $16,000 just in postage.
So, this all mail-in election that you just had for the school board fell under all the new rules, correct?
It did.
And what was the cost of that election? Do you know yet?
At this point, it's still being calculated. There's a lot of different components that go in. I believe the postage just for the mail out, was that at $8,000? Was a little over $8,000. We still haven't gotten the bill from the post office from what has been mailed back in. So we don't have a full amount just yet.
Is there, I'm not entirely sure what question I want to ask here. I'm sort of feeling my way through this, but, so in the rule changes that are governing all this, is there a time limit on when the agency has to pay you back? Like, are we at risk for carrying somebody for months and months for the cost of an election? I'm assuming they don't have to pay up front.
No, I'm not sure exactly. Again, it's all so new if there is a time limit in there. At that point, in the previous, whatever they were responsible for, we did bill them, and, some did pay a lot faster than others. We'll find out, as we go through. I can definitely double check to see if something was put in place when they put the rules in, as if there's a specific time frame. At this point, I haven't seen this.
Okay. And then the other question I have is, elections are expensive.
Very.
And is there, for some reason, I have the sense that there are going to be more elections now, not fewer. Is that true? Is that
Well,
just my imagination?
No, we
Is
will be
there-
holding
will
there will be an election held every November now. And it just depends if there's an entity that needs a special election for whatever reason. So we will have elections every November, and then obviously, and then our election schedule, which is your primary, your general. So yes, we're going to be very busy.
And is there a way to consolidate special elections?
No, a special election is requested by the agency. And that, so, just for example, the election that we just had was a special, it was a bond election, and that was requested by the Silver School District.
So if Cobra was interested, or it was time for them to do the same thing, could you consolidate?
No,
the two?
they especially elect, it depends on the agency that requests it.
So I guess my understanding is on these special elections, we do have the possibility of recouping some of this money that's thrown out. Right?
The agency is going to be responsible for reimbursing.
Okay.
Which in my book means there's a cushion in here, right? And whether we want to leave the cushion or not is one of our responsibilities.
Well, correct me, in one with your question, the 25,000 is like, the special election that was just held, we have to put the money up front.
Yeah, so we obviously we had, the postage had to be paid for before it went out. There was, there's costs that have to be done prior, yes.
So at the end of our next fiscal year, if everything goes right, that 25,000 should be back in.
Yes.
That's what.
So hopefully, and again, I apologize, everything is so new that we're not really sure on how it's going to work, and it's new for the state itself, so there's not even anything we can kind of go back and see how it's been working for others.
This will all be learning together, right?
Yes, definitely.
Any other questions?
No, just out of curiosity, what elections will we just mail in?
All special elections they can only be all mail. So all special elections will be all mail.
Although Mr. Billings would like us to remember that women also may vote.
So any kind of bond election, any kind of...
If it's a special election that's being requested, will be all mail out. Although there is a higher voter turnout when you do an all mail out election.
So do we have any, could we voluntarily elect to do an all-male election for like a primary or something like that? Do we have control over that, or is that all done by the state? It's all decided by the state.
If you all needed to do a special election for something, you fall under the same rules,
We could do it by somehow engineering a special
Well,
election
yeah,
for
but
that
not
thing.
for a primary or
Right.
general, but if you needed to do a special election for, whatever reason, it's the same thing, you'd be responsible for the payment.
Any other questions?
And this is not just for you, but it's trying to get me to understand this paper here. The way I read it, it's 25% increase, but it's not.
That might be the next line. The 25% increase is the other election expenses? Is that what you're looking at?
Well, no, if you look at the bottom,
Oh, the whole budget.
yes, so I know that's not it.
So the recommended increase is 1.68%.
Right?
No. Oh, so there's a weird thing in the clerk's department, by the way, that I was speaking about with the clerk just before the meeting. Actually, the budget that's recommended by our management is higher than the budget that was requested by the department, which looks really unusual, right? But it's because of the new position that Linda mentioned. That new position apparently got in here after the clerk requested a budget, and so it makes the recommended look higher. That's why the 1.68% is unusual. It really is a 25.77% increase. That's the real number, and that includes the new position. It doesn't include the raise that we discussed a little bit ago. But I would actually call it overly conservative. I do budgeting all the time. I appreciate a cushion. They're incredibly useful, giving the department some flexibility, and what we have to decide is how much flexibility to give. $25,000 increase for special elections without an accompanying increase in the income to that department, to me, is more of a cushion that we need to provide. So that, if that changes, if that goes from 25,000 to 10,000, then all of a sudden our increase is only 20,000, which is a 15% increase, 14 to 15%. So, to me, that's why the number is so high, that 26% doesn't need to be that high.
So if we lowered that number, that 25,000, and requester A had not yet paid for their special election, therefore tying up that cushion, then where would the funds come? And a new special election came along before the requester B made wanted a special election. Where would the money come from to pay for that? Pay for the expenses of that?
Well, I don't know if Linda, you can give a more accurate answer.
We'd have to find it, right? The point is, we have to find it.
It has to be.
Sure, but we have cash reserves,
Yeah.
right, partly for unexpected things. And it seems to me we'll be starting the year probably with a reimbursement from Silver Consolidated in July. I mean, I'm not sure about that, but if we don't even know the number yet, by the time we bill them, I'm guessing they won't pay until July.
That is correct.
In which case, we'll be starting with an excess, right?
A cushion on top.
A cushion on top of a cushion.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure I was thinking about
Does
that.
that make sense?
No, it does. I'm just, the great thing about this is if it is under, it still goes into our general fund.
Sure.
And it's still there. In case we have to, down the road, say, pull some more money into it. So I think we're good.
I have a question, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Commissioners. Marisa, does this also include reimbursements for personnel, or is it just strictly for the postage?
They need to pay for the entire election, so we should be getting reimbursed for the overtime or the personnel that had to be hired, because we had to hire a board, election board, to go ahead and do the results.
So that's all part of the billing.
Should, yes.
But they don't have to pay for your time, since you're on salary.
Just extra employees.
Right.
Any other questions? Or anything else? Thank you.
Well, I do. And again, some budget ignorance by myself. So we come upon, we're getting next year, March, and we have a situation that Mr. Brown says, Commissioner Brown, and that we have an excess. Okay, for you to adjust this into some other line item, do you have to go through Santa Fe? If you're just within your line item, say you had more overtime that was expected, can you adjust that to another line item in your budget?
And I believe that's for...
Yes, you can, as long as it's within that same fund, you can, with the approval of the commissioners.
Yes.
Yeah.
But if we needed money for the assessor's office or maintenance, and they said, hey, we got some money here, then we would have to send a budget request to Santa Fe, right?
No, because it's still within the general fund.
Okay, so
But they would have to come to us in that case.
Exactly, the commissioners would have to approve that.
okay.
Technical
What needs to be approved by DFA?
If you're going to do a budget increase within the fund, above what they've already approved, if you're going to transfer any funds out of the general fund, then it will. If it's going to have a net effect at the bottom number, you have to get that approved by Santa Fe.
Okay, got it.
So in other words, excuse me. So in other words, if in mid-year we decide we need to have another position in a department, then that has to be approved by Santa Fe because it's going to increase the budget.
Correct.
Unless we're cutting something else.
Right. But it's going to change that bottom number.
Yes.
So we have to learn this every year.
Well, every government agency in Santa Fe treats, people different. Through the schools, anything that was going to go out of line had to be approved.
Any other questions? Thank you again. Moving on to D, Assessor's Department. Julieta.
Thank you very much. Good morning, Chairman, board members.
Good morning. Sorry, Alex, didn't mean that.
But good morning, Chairman, board members, and for the record, if I may, under the D, Assessor's Department, Julieta County Assessor, we also have the 499 budget, and I would just like to make sure that that's on the record. If I may.
Can you tell what the 499 was?
It's actually the reappraisal fund. So we actually have the 401 budget and we have the 499 budget. So just for the record. It's on page 14. Thank you very much. This is off the budget 401. The only thing I'm asking is actually salary increases for my appraisers and title examiners. And we're just asking 5% to just get them at the mid-range. And my chief appraiser, she's actually a wonderful human being, and her responsibilities is enormous. And I'm just asking 7% for my chief appraiser. And even though, we'll get into that in a minute, I know I only have 5 minutes. But the partial mapping correction process and funding, we have phase 1 of the project finalizing in December finalized by 2018. Vendor selected for 2018 from Bohannon UK. Contract was about $113,400. Project kicked off in January of 2019. Project invoicing was $44,000 for this fiscal year. The balance is $76,000, and the phase for 2 incorporated for Grand County. So in other words, we haven't identified the vendors on it, but we just want to continue and finish off that the partial correction. And once again, we're actually the last county in the state to get that done. My salary increase. Any questions on that, Ronnie Chance? Thank you very much. Salary increase for union representatives, I actually talked to the union president, and our appraiser, the max is 5%, the chief appraiser, 7%, and even though if she gets the 7% only for the mid-range, she still needs another 13% just to get to the midpoint. Interesting to say, the responsibility for this individual, and I'm not just talking an individual person, I'm talking the responsibility of that position is enormous. So all appraisers, once again, 5%, chief appraiser 7%, and it's a very small amount. Once again, we're still down about 4 employees in the assessor's office, and I was just not going to get into that this year, but I'm definitely going to get into it next year, and hopefully that I can have other help so we can actually give a complete breakdown of what the assessor's office. And the reason the contentious position classifications are both internally equitable, externally competitive, and personal motivating. Interesting to say, we've actually had employees that have left after 3 years, after taking some IAA courses, EDGE courses, and so on, and to train these people, educate them, it takes a little bit of funding from our main funding at 401 and also the reappraisal. On February 2019, 1 degree employee of 18 months working our sales ratios analysis, she actually had to leave for more money, and it's kind of interesting that we have to go back, work on our sales ratios analysis, and it's your job, buddy. The only thing I'm just asking is just if we can get my 5% for my chief appraiser, and I mean my appraisers and my title examiner. And we did get evaluated by the state of New Mexico, and was amazed what the salary was for that GIS individual for what she has done. Any questions on the 401, because I will continue to talk about the 499 right after this, if I may. I'm not asking for very much, just those two items.
Mr. Tureta, for me to get it in my head,
Yes, sir.
what is a 5% raise? What, dollar-wise, money-wise?
That, I don't have it with me, but it is not very much, to be honest with you. It's a very small percentage. Because we broke it down from 5%, 10%, 15%, and Linda, if I may, but it's not a very large amount. I'm just going by percentages right now.
Is it reflected in your requested budget?
Yes, it
That
is.
is correct.
So if we look at the requested, it's almost 15,000 more than the recommended. So did you see that?
No, actually, I'm having a hard time seeing this.
These pages are incredibly dense. So at the very bottom of page 5 is the assessment full-time salaries. Okay. Oh, really? I'm looking at page 5 of 20, but
Yes, okay, I'm there.
if we're all different, then that's a problem.
Well, mine is different. Yours is-
Oh, okay. So it says full-time salaries, the recommended amount, that's what Charlene and her team have given us, that's the right of the two shaded columns in the middle.
Yeah, okay, I see
Okay,
that.
yeah. And then the request is what came from the department, in this case from Mr. Cubierta. That's the 287. If you go further to the right, there you go. That 287 is what he's asking for.
Okay, so,
Okay, here's the one right here.
so,
So
this is what we
we
recommend.
recommend. This does not include.
So he's asking for 12.8 more than the manager's recommending.
See, what I do have a schedule, so, and as if it's,
And of course, there's corresponding benefit.
6%.
And they're huge.
Just because I have a
And Mr. Chairman, any requested salary increases were not in the recommended rates. We're in the middle
And again, the other thing that I'm asking, because I don't know, since we do have union, is there an ability to give some people raises and some people not?
Well, matter of fact, I did speak to the union rep and asked, as long as I get it to you guys and talking about these increases, it's actually by what the commission has to say, is pretty much the bottom line. I would just like to also interject this, is we actually had a couple of temp employees coming out of the 499 budget. You have to understand that part of my budget for paying these employees is out of the 401 budget and also the 499 budget, so there's an 80-20% of the So interesting to say, this last year, just doing an internal reappraisal, we actually have brought in more value sitting in the office without actually going out in the field, where they could pretty much justify a $12,000 increase on these salaries just for our employees. Interesting to say, I will be continuing to do what I can to bring in more value. Matter of fact, it's actually an internal. Right now, we're just trying to pretty much cover up our office with all the responsibilities that are in there. Interesting to say, once again, we're lacking about 3 to 4 employees, and I did send you that information from the IWO standard. Not only that, from the net new valuation maintenance, and come June, I will have to give my presentation for the county commissioners for the state report that I have to report to the property tax division.
Mr. Triota, I would like to see the, what you're talking about on paper with the increase, please.
Not a problem. I will get that to you, and I will get you the net new valuation maintenance. Did you actually receive the PowerPoint presentation that we actually sent out? I sent one each one.
Yeah, but what I'm referring to is you just stated that you can cover the $12,000 increase sitting in your office. I want to see that.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that, Mr.
Are you done with the 499 portion?
The 401.
Are you done with both?
No, I was just gonna start with the 499 if I
Then
may.
I can wait.
Thank you very much. The 499, we actually, many years ago, we actually would get 2% from what the taxes would come in for the treasurer's office, and now we're down to 1%. And it actually is to run reappraisals and buy, and hire temporary employees to run these reappraisals. They're very important, and matter of fact, on my last evaluation, that was one of the issues that we brought up about the reappraisal. So we're actually on it now, because we have to place it within the next 6 years, 4 to 6 years to get these reappraisals on that. One thing that I really, that I'm really interested on is the temporary employees' salaries. I have no issues about that. Full-time, I have no issues about that. But we added a clothing allowance of only $1,600, and it actually comes out of the reappraisal fund, and that's the 499, and it's pretty much, the money's actually there. And the reason I say this is we do have a lot of employees that go out in the field and to pick up valuation, and it would be nice to have a clothing allowance so we can be actually identified that we're out there. We're no different than the sheriff's department. The only thing we don't do is carry a gun, okay? And once again, it comes out of the 499 budget, where they actually have shirts that actually Soul County assessors. Our vehicles are tagged, so we can actually go out there to do our job. We do go into random. We don't contact over 21,000 individuals to say that we're going to be knocking on their door, especially on reappraisals. I do use the media, the radio, that's stating that we're going to be working these reappraisals. We are in that area. So I'm just asking $1,600 on that one for a clothing allowance. And once again, it just comes out of the 499. It's not coming out of the general budget. On the printing and publishing, I'm asking a small amount of $500 because what has happened is there's been a lot of transition on the property tax division on firing orders, and we have to put it in the newspaper, okay? And it's just a small amount, and that's the only thing I'm asking. I'm not really asking for very much. I'm going to be working on our next year's budget, starting as probably tomorrow more than anything else. But other than that, we're just, our budget for reappraisal has held out since 2014 until current, so that's all I'm asking there, Chairman and board members.
Mr. Turrieta, can you tell us what line equipment, the uniforms are in?
The clothing, it's actually, we're bringing one up, it's the 49958, 5147 in Linda. I mean, is that a specific, we just put that together?
5147's not in here.
Well, that's the one we're going to be adding. We're just going to add another number for a line item for clothing allowance.
So but it's not in your request?
It is in our request, but we don't have a line item because that's one of the new items that we're trying to add for the budgeting.
So where on this?
It's not on there.
No.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Commissioners, it's not on his request. It just didn't pick it up because it's something that's new. So I think it's not to include it, but he did request it. He did request it.
Thank you for that clarification. And that was 1,600. There's nothing else that isn't on here?
No, that's it. No, thank you very much, Mr. Commissioner Brown. No, I don't want to sneak any numbers around you because I know what I'll get.
I have a question, actually, it's on 401. The capital outlay line, our recommendation is 10,000 higher than the request. Can we...
Actually, dealing with Misha about this parcel correction, that money has pretty much been allotted. It's just moving monies around, and I've been working closely with Misha Lodge about this project, and it's doing very well at this moment. But that money has actually been budgeted out. It's just adjusting the numbers on that.
That's the remaining contract for the parcel mapping.
Okay.
Yes, that is correct.
So we thought the remaining contract was worth 86,000, and it's really only worth 76,000. Is that what we're saying?
No, it's actually 86,000. That's the remaining encumbrance on that purchase order for the contract.
86,000.
Yes.
And we might end up saving money.
The way
Because it
things
says
are going,
76,000 in the request.
That was just a number that the assessor put in there because they weren't actually sure where the balance was on it. And I took the actual number of where we were at.
and in reality, it might be end up sending, we're moving very good, we're moving very diligently, a lot of help there from the planning department, so it could be a saving in the budget itself.
We don't always spend every last dollar of every purchase order, right? I mean, those are
Oh,
presumably...
we have a contract. We do.
The purchase orders in the contract.
And it's a fixed contract, not an hourly or something like that?
Correct.
Okay.
So I'm sorry, I don't understand then why, if we have $86,205.43 encumbered on a contract, why wouldn't that be the same under requests, and then we deal with the savings at some other point in the budget process?
Mr. Chairman, it was just an estimate that Raul put in, thinking it was about 76,000 that was left on there. That was just an estimate that was submitted with the requested budget.
Okay.
So the 86,000 is what
What
is
it's
left
actually,
on the
okay,
contract.
I understand, thank you.
Thank you, the manager.
Got it.
Okay, here's another question. Why is it under capital outlay?
Well, that's to do with
Because anything that is going to be above $5,000, and in order for the auditor to pick it up, it goes into capital outlay. So when they run it as far as fixed assets, they're going to pick up that this is what we paid on this contract.
Okay, so it is going to be an asset, so exactly what is it that you're going to be getting from the service?
We're actually correcting the parcel corrections, and let me, if I may, Mr. Chairman, board members, I do have a small write-up on it where we're actually correcting a lot of these parcel lines here in Grant County. What has happened is, throughout the years, we've been utilizing, and that's one of the reasons we haven't really been online, because a lot of the parcel lines are really off, I mean, up to about 300 feet, and we're just actually correcting that, and we do have a contractor by the name of Ohio Houston that we meet once every other Tuesday about how far we are. We're saving a lot of money because I know that the planning department is actually doing a lot of scanning and so on. We're just trying to correct all these property lines for our GIS and also our parcel mapping. It's one of the most important issues here in Grant County to correct these property lines on our parcel maps. That's pretty much it.
So I'd like to, I think maybe, I think it's a really good question. Because a lot of professional services contracts, even over 5,000, are not capital outlay. Right, they're professional
Capital
services.
outlay was tangible.
Right. So I suspect, how are we funding this project?
The general fund.
So there's no aspect of it that was coming from a bond or anything like that?
No.
Okay. So that was my idea number one. That might have been an answer to the question. And the second would be, it's more esoteric, but if you think about what are our assets as a county government, an accurate survey of the property parcels within our jurisdiction could be considered an asset. So even though it's a service to actually do the re-surveying, reparceling, it's contributing to the quality of what is effectively an asset for the county. So I might think of it that way. What's that?
Data that we own.
That's actually our data in the county itself.
Well, and also, having that accurate parceling makes the asset
It's a higher quality asset.
higher quality asset. That's what I agree with, yeah.
But my thinking was that capital outlay had to be something tangible that could be quantified and depreciated. So that was, but I'm good now.
Well, that's why it was a really good question, I think.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, board members.
Do we have any other questions? Okay, we're gonna move on to the next one, Treasurer's Department. Steve?
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, I want to preface my comments by trying to make sure that we're communicating what our intentions are. I made a comment in open session last week that I think was misunderstood or maybe misspoken. When I said, I made a comment about nobody listening to what I have to say, and my intention was not to shed a negative light on the manager or the fiscal services department. What I was referring to is that my requests for changes in my department have always been submitted to the HR department, because being my background is you go, if you want to say, through the chain of command or the proper channels, and that's where my requests have been submitted, and I review with them occasionally any change of status, no, whatever, and I can understand why the manager was upset when I made those comments, because if she felt that I was referring to her. And so I just want to make sure that you guys all understand that that was not what I was referring to. And I have been able to work quite well when we do get together. Charlene and I we understand that the nature of the beast, it's going to be something that we just have to work together and do. So anyway, with that basically said, if you guys have any questions about that, when she mentioned that we had received the reclassifications, which was my initial request from 2-3 years ago, that was the first that I had heard of that. When I went back to my office and I told my girls, I said, do you guys realize that your positions are now considered senior county services? This is, well, we never knew. So so there's, if you want to say, miscommunications all the way around, and so, like I say, with that said, I just want to move forward. I did speak with the county manager yesterday, I believe it was, or Tuesday. Days get so on the request, just because previously the budget had been the temporary position that we had, or part-time salary, had been listed as the under full-time salaries. I had put my request in under that line, but after reviewing, after what we've experienced with the temporary position, and I'm not, like I say, I'm glad to see the progression of those two individuals, but it kind of brought to light to us in the department that perhaps what we need to do is, rather than get a whole new body for a temporary time or whatever, because basically a lot of our time is spent early on is training them, and they're doing a lot of the actual work. So I'm asking to change the request that we have here. I know it's a preliminary, but to make it simple, what I'm asking, under the recommended, you see that part-time salaries of $12,480. Well, I'm asking that $8,070.40 be shifted up to full-time salaries, and that would bring our two employees, they're now below the mid-range in their new classification, and that would bring them just over the midpoint of their classification. And the balance of that $12,480 will cover the increase in the PERA, Social Security, and retirement, retiree retirement. So we're going with the recommendation, in other words, requesting that number be what we use. And the rest of it, the changes between our request and our changes, we can live with non-capital equipment of $2,500 that we requested and it was not approved. We can live with that. We had requested $2,500 for training and they recommended $2,100. And this was something that we agreed on, and we, as my chief deputy is getting to the end of her certification process, there won't be the full need for, the $2,500. The $2,100 should cover the rest of her certification and so on, the training that we will be doing. So pretty much we can go with everything that's on the recommendation. In talking about the certification process and so on, we because of our funding for mileage and per diem and so on, I decided that I would not go to the conference in June and have my chief deputy go earlier to get the classes so she could take the classes on Monday, Tuesday, and one class on Wednesday, I believe it is, that she'll be taking. But it brought to my sense that sending her on her own could be a possible whatever problem. The last 3 trips that we have had to go distance, we've had issues with the vehicle that we have assigned to our department. It's a 2009 Journey, and while it only has 77,000 miles on it, the first issue we had was we were having a lot of, the transmission was slipping. We went up to Socorro, I went up to Socorro, and the county manager and one of her assistants had to follow us back down just in case that, any issues came up. The check engine light would come on and off intermittently the next trip, and the last trip, when my chief deputy was up for her schooling in Albuquerque, this check engine light also came on. It has been in the maintenance department. They've checked it out each time that we've had the issues. I actually took it to Lolly's because it's, I told them that, in my opinion, it was should be covered under the warranty for the vehicle, and we kind of went round and round about it, but they agreed to check it out, and they said that they could not find any repairs that were necessary. They couldn't duplicate what I was referring to, so but there was no charge for them checking it out. The maintenance department, the fleet, whatever, whoever is down there, Toby and those guys, they had it over there for 3 weeks, and they said they just couldn't, duplicate the check engine light coming on, and the tests didn't show anything. So, while it's been a good vehicle, I mean, my request that it was kind of after the fact that we had this, it's not in this, is I kind of spec'd out another Journey. I think that the Journey is a good vehicle that, I think what's lacking on the one that we have now is that it is the 4-cylinder. So what I'm requesting is the upgrade to 3.6 V6 motor, which is about $25,000. And my workaround, or whatever you want to call it, for this June meeting, I have talked to Mr. Turrieta and his people, and we're trying to work it out to where we can either borrow a vehicle from him for this trip while we, and then the Journey's a good vehicle for running around town and doing stuff here. It's just the issues seem to be popping up when you go any distance. So I don't know if it's a good idea to just say, well, we'll put it off and request that to be an item for the next thing, and just work it out with another department to borrow a vehicle when we have to go out of town. But if there is a possibility that we could get, a new vehicle, and of course, some of the cost, what I spec'd out was at $25,380. Of course, there would be a trade-in value, which I have no clue what that would be. I'm estimating $8,000 to $10,000 trade-in value, but I don't have a quote from, I was just going off of the state contract numbers, so.
So we don't have a request in this budget along those lines, right? You're just letting us know because in the future you might come back.
It wasn't in time for when I submitted the original request, but I would like for you to request it. I mean, kind of and I had spoken to,
it just seems quite premature for us to consider buying a vehicle. In this case, there's a lot to be discussed, I would say. First of all, vehicles among different departments, in my mind, of course they should be shared, right? They're county vehicles. They're not treasurer vehicles. They're county vehicles that happen to be assigned for primary use to one department. So that's point A. And my point B is, I can't imagine for the number of trips you take that it makes sense to buy a vehicle rather than rent a vehicle. And all these things, are questions for management, not for us. So I'd say, I'm sorry to hear about the problems you're having, but it's nothing we're going to address in this year's budget.
Yeah, well, I discussed that with Charlene on Tuesday, and whatever works. I mean, that's, we're agreeable to do whatever. If it can be traded in for, instead of one of the other vehicles that's going to be sold or traded in or whatever, that would be, could serve us for the long distance travel, if there's such an animal in the county domain, we're willing to do whatever we,
Okay.
Thank you.
A couple of questions, Steve. First of all, I sort of agree with Mr. Brown that maybe the money wouldn't be able to find here, but they're all common vehicles. And certainly a swap to a vehicle that would be more reliable long range would be a viable solution. But here, the questions I have is, so you're not going to have a part-time employee? No?
That's what I'm requesting.
You're going to roll that into more time for your regular employees?
Correct.
Okay. But also, if you feel that your employees' salary needs to be increased, is this not an opportunity for you to do that, such as Mr. Turrieta?
Say that again?
I think that is what he's proposing.
No, well, this is, he's needed a part-time employee because the workload increases. Now.
Well, no. It's not that the workload increased. The workload's been there from day one, and yes, it does increase gradually. What I'm saying is that after speaking to, we had asked for a whole new employee, full-time employee since way back when. But we've continued to do the work, and we've continued to do. A future treasurer may come back to a future commission and say, I need a body, I need some, but that's possibly a treasurer that doesn't have the work ethics that I do. I'm sorry to blow my own horn, but I get in there and I take care of my customers. We had the 4 people online at the front lines when our deadlines, both in December and now in May. And I was at my desk, taking payments at my desk, back in the back. So we do the work. But what I'm saying is that by the time we take and train that employee, the temporary employee, a temporary employee will not work, because it's not just, it's just the nature of the job. I mean, they have no benefits, they're working 40 hours a week for that period. And it's just difficult. They get up to speed, and it's not, I'm not saying, like I say, they have both left for other openings within the county, which is a good thing. But at the end of the day, we all had to pitch in and get the job done. And I think that if we have the fact that my 2 employees that are there right now are below the mid-range for their classification, this is the opportunity, and that's what we spoke about, to bring them a little bit above the mid-range within their classification.
Well, I can see that we have the need for a part-timer, but what you're doing now is taking that need and rolling it into the other employees. So I'm saying, why don't you just keep your part-timer, and do you not have the opportunity to raise their wages, get that wage request in, such as Mr. Tureta did, without losing any help?
Well, that would just mean a request for a lot more money. I mean, on top of the $8,000 in salary, and then the other $4,000 in benefits, you'd be talking about another $15,000 on top of that. I mean, so my original request was for $15,360, which is the, 16 pay periods? 6 pay periods the first half and 6 pay periods, 8 pay periods the first half and 8 pay periods the second half, which was the $15,800 that when it works out to be at the $12 an hour wage for that part-time position.
Well, I mean, I'm just thinking, the work that was done by that employee is not going to have to be rolled on to you and the other employees. So that might mean having overtime and stuff like that.
That's what I said, that within our department, we work it out, and to me, it's just giving them the increase for, what they do and everything else. I mean, when we're training the individual, I mean, they're the ones doing all the work, because that's what they need to do and I think it's almost a waste of time to have a part-time individual, because we're not going to have the same individual 2 periods at a time in a row. So it's train them and then do the work and then they move on. Whether it's within the county or somewhere else, it doesn't matter. They can't work for 4 months, be off for 4 months, and then come back for 4 months, and then be off for 4 months. A typical part-timer won't, and like I say, that's our experience with these people. It's like, it was good training, and it's gonna help them, and they both have said it makes us understand how taxes work, how the assessor's office works, and we have a better knowledge of what goes on in the county because of our training. But, that's, they both have said that if they had to go elsewhere, they probably would not apply for the temporary job again. So,
well, I appreciate you, you guys are going to take on extra work, But you figured out a way how to raise the salaries without affecting the bottom line. That's great. Thank you.
No, that's,
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, I just would like to ask a clarifying question. Was my understanding we budgeted this as a part-time position, not temporary or seasonal, according to personnel, so that you could use them 10 hours a week for 52 weeks a year, or however you wanted to use them? Is that correct?
That's correct. It would be a regular part-time position.
That was my understanding, and by looking at how the benefits are calculated, that it would be a permanent part-time position, not a temporary or seasonal position. Does that make a difference for you?
well, I'm not sure how, so you're saying that a part-time position with a salary of $12,480, that's including what's included there? What pay rate, and,
It would be $12 an hour, and they would be able to work 1,040 hours a year.
so,
However you please to work them. So like if it's your tax season, you could have them work 8 hours a day for whatever months you need to, or however you wish to have that employee work.
yeah, but they still wouldn't have any benefits or anything like that,
No,
right?
there's
See?
still no
So that's
benefits.
basically what we had. So, and that's what I'm saying, it's not, I don't think that that's a viable solution, because, now if it was, of course, like I say, a full-time, part-timer, without benefits, this wouldn't work for us, I don't think, and it would, the other way it would be, like if they're only working, certain times, that also is only, six pay periods, I believe, per session, the way that she was describing that position. It would be, the $12,480 would be for 6 pay periods the first half, and 6 pay periods the second half.
Okay, thanks. You answered my question.
What I was wondering, it seems to me that our manager understands the proposal, and I wonder if you'd take a crack at explaining it to me.
What he just proposed to you?
Yes.
I can try. The way he explained it to me is he does not want to fill, he doesn't want
Part-time.
any more part-time
Got
position.
it.
He wants to take that salary and increase his staff in his office,
Increase in what way?
hourly rate.
Not the number of hours worked.
Not the number of hours, he wants
So,
to increase the hourly rate.
Thank you for doing this so concisely. And if we approve this shift, does that count as you approving the change in pay rate? Because my understanding is you approve those things. And if we approve this budget, that means we're directing you to approve the pay rate change?
I only approve what we have within the budget. So if you approve him, I think it equates to $3 an hour, is that correct?
So is that?
It equates to $3 an hour, is that what you explained to me on Tuesday?
Approximately, yeah.
So yes, if that's, if,
Okay, this is the third department. As I mentioned earlier, we were going to hear this again from other departments, right? This is the third department that's requested an adjustment. And in this case, not necessarily to bring to mid-range, it's to reclassify, basically.
no, sir, we reclassified already. So his staff was initially classified as a county service specialist, and at that time, they were above the max. So they weren't eligible,
Right.
according to the salary plan, for any salary increases.
Right.
He came back to us, requested that we change them to a senior county service specialist, was bump them up 2 pay grades. So that is what we did.
Okay,
That
that's
he said
exactly the
that
process I was
The
asking.
communication, I guess, did not fall back to, did not make it back to him. So they have been recently reclassified as a senior county service specialist, which is pay grade 29, which I believe is two pay grades above where they were. So now, with their salary increase, it would put them slightly over the mid-range with what he's proposing.
So I have contradictory feelings about this. One, this is exactly what I want department heads to do, right? To take their budgets and figure out how to meet their needs with their understanding of their departments, right? This is what we talked about the sheriff's doing. You've got this extra money, you can give a, but two, I don't want this to be done piecemeal, right? If it's a question of bringing people to midpoints of ranges in a salary study that's been done carefully, I would like that done in all departments. So I'm actually not sure how I want to proceed. If I want to, this makes sense to me, but I don't particularly want to do this without giving other department heads the ability to do the same thing. Does that make sense?
You know, I think I'm in agreement with you there. I mean, to me, you know, department heads, of course, the consensus and talking to the county manager should be able to manage their budget. That's what we're giving them. I think down the road is that if this is the budget that's approved, then it needs to be followed. As far as how you spend it or how you do it, that's up to there. But it's not like, okay, we approve this budget, but you know, in 2 months, well, we're giving this raise, we're giving that raise. It should be followed here with these numbers. I mean, that's the way I look at this. It's not, don't throw something in front of us, and then later, well, I give so-and-so raise and this. It's, as long as it stays in with what you have in here, you know, I think it's, if I'm understanding sort of what you're saying there.
Yeah, I think you are, except that, I don't know how you feel about the other two requests, right? We heard one from the clerk's office and one from the assessor's office about specific positions they felt needed more pay.
Right.
And they didn't necessarily have a proposal. Well, we don't have it recommended to us, a proposal that would allow that.
Right.
So I think if we say, yes, Steve, we like this shift of the 12,480 so that you can accomplish what you need to accomplish in your department, that we need to go back and look at what needs to be done in the other two departments to allow the same kind of departmental autonomy.
So it's a fair and consistency.
That's exactly where I'm going.
You see, and that's where I'm going with fair and consistency, is that we're going to look at and take public input and look at what department heads and elected officials are requesting. If we say, you know, whatever your budget is and somehow fixes, not down the road, well, it wasn't in the budget, but I gave this person, or I didn't get up that bad and I gave them this rate. I don't think that's where we're headed as far as fair and consistency.
Yeah.
So, another concern that I have is, and I agree that it's great that the treasurer, you know, looked at his budget and figured out how he wanted to do that. I mean, I appreciate that, thank you. On the other hand, if there are times during the year when these are not salaried positions, right, they're hourly. And so if there are times during the year when this office or any other department that would use this process to accomplish what the treasurer has more work that needs to be done and it forces overtime, where does that come from? So in here, there is no overtime budgeted. And so if you have, and I've completely lost track of how many pay periods we were talking about, but 1,040 hours worth of time that was budgeted to this department that is now gone, if they need an additional 1,040 hours worth of work over the year, then it would come out in overtime, which is not budgeted. Am I making sense?
Yes.
So does the work just not get done?
We comp overtime before we pay overtime according to our policy.
We comp it?
We allow comp time, you know, how to switch.
Yeah.
Sorry.
But I think that's great. I mean, comp time is great, but in the long run, you're still losing that employee because now they're on comp time and you're falling behind on your work. They're still still costing.
It helps with surges, but not with long-term.
Right.
Well, in that same train of thought, Randy, and let me take, since the sheriff sitting right here, he has 10 positions open, right? So if the sheriff was to say, I'm going to restructure the way that we do our things, and I'm going to say that we can do it with 7 positions. So now I want to take the salaries that were supposed to be committed to 3 officers, and I'm going to split it among the remaining ones. And that's going to be great. But now you stay with that prediction that you had for the 7. You can't come back in a year and say, I was mistaken. I can't do it. I need 2 positions back. So saying, if that's the way you figured it, that's the way you have. Such as Mr. Mandela's coming back and saying, you know what, geez, I need a line item now for overtime. But give them the flexibility to do that, because certainly, going along with the sheriff, 3 positions would mean a pretty good bump for all the other officers. Yeah.
Well, I think the other piece that brings into question is efficiency. Is it actually possible that the Treasurer's Department, for example, didn't need that 1,040 hours if they are changing how they do their job within that department and increasing their efficiency? So I think that is also part of the question, and it applies to what you're saying about the sheriff's office as well. It may be quite possible that with a more efficient scheduling system, that 7 additional deputies is all they need. But I agree, if it's a mistake and they come back next year, then we're really stuck, because if they need 3 more deputies, if it turns out that they really needed all 10, then the 7 have their salary increase. And if we have another cut in copper production, for example, then we are really stuck, and we are going to have to say, sorry, Mr. Sheriff, or sorry, Mr. Treasurer, or whomever, you're stuck.
And that's probably going to have to be.
Salaries back.
Right.
And once it's there, it's there. Right. And this is what I'm trying to say. Somehow we need to stay consistent, not only with hourly employees, we also have to stay consistent with salary employees as to what we do and what we allow, and so it goes across the board. And once you give a salary, it's there. I mean, we're not going to punish the hourly employee.
Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, my reasoning is that because, I would have requested a pay increase for them, for my employees anyway, in other words, the reason I did not request it is because when I did this request, I was looking at the fact that they were maxed out where they were under the General County Services Specialist, which is a Class 18. Because they were bumped up to the Class 29, the senior, that puts them below the medium for that classification. So that's why the request to correct this issue that's why I'm requesting that increase be given to them.
I think we understand that.
Okay.
I think we're clear on that. I think the discussion really is how do we accommodate that request and all the other requests when we have flat or declining revenue. And we're faced with flat or declining revenue, and the need for raises and compensation and operating expenses and all that sort of stuff is continuing to go up. And so I think what we're wrestling with is how we're going to accommodate all of those things. So, yeah, and I think, I really do have a concern. Like, I really appreciate as I said before, the initiative of looking at your budget and figuring out how to do what you want to do. I do really appreciate that, but if what that causes in the future is a situation where your office can't get the work done without an additional line item for overtime or a part-time employee or something like that, that puts us in a really difficult position if we continue to operate in a flat revenue environment. And, when I say flat revenue, there are certainly things, and I have been thinking a lot about how can we address revenue. What are the ways that the county can increase revenue? Well, the question really is all of the ways that we can increase revenue, do they also accommodate the increase in employees that would it take to do that? Are there enough places to increase revenue within the county? And actually, that is a conversation that I think that I really want to see this commission have over the next year, is what are the areas, what can we do in the assessor's office? What can we do with services? Look at these things to me, when we look at a budget, it's always about trying to cut or move around or, whatever. And so I really want to have a conversation about what are the ways that we can increase revenue and cover the expense of doing that if it takes additional employees. Or really look at the efficiencies of our departments.
Well, and let me just take this a step further. What freedom are we going to give all the officials to manage the budget that's given to them with respect to employees? Again, I'm going to use the sheriff as an example. If he has 10 vacancies and he wants to restructure and say, you know what, I really need some specialty departments, because he talks a lot about narcotics and maybe weapons, and these are going to be specialized areas. So I want to take the salary from a couple of salaries and give an increase to these specialized areas. Are we going to give him the freedom to restructure as he sees fit? Because he's running a department, even though it's costing a lot of overtime, and he might be able to figure out a way how to get everything taken care of with less employees to be able to get these specialty areas without having. My fear is that he's going to get it done with grant money, and it's a very needed position. But we all know grant money is soft money. Yes. So, and giving them the freedom to do that, any of the departments,
Sorry, go ahead.
I know that I've been in situations where we lost a person due to, whatever, an injury, that they left, maternity, whatever it was. The other employees just really picked up the slack and did more. So, it can be done. But, again, are we giving them the freedom to do this, such as Mr. Armendariz has done right now?
Well, I think it's... I think it's really important to give department heads and elected officials a certain amount of freedom to manage their own budgets. I think that is a really important thing. On the other hand, I think we also have to look at how we're going to manage a mistake. And I'm not saying that it's necessarily a mistake, but, if we are looking at things like you said, at grants, and we can only do that thing for a certain amount of time, or, those sorts of things. I also think that the other thing that I think we need to take into consideration when we're having these conversations is that, it would be my preference to not have to drive us into a position where we have to lay people off. in the long run, I think we have to balance the idea of the level of salary increases that we're talking about with how long we can manage those salary increases over time, because, like you said, we can't ever take them back. And so, that for me is a big thing. I would rather be upfront and honest with county employees about, I'd like to pay you less and keep you on in hard times than pay you more now and lay you off when coffee production is down or whatever.
I think one of the, and listening to what you said there, but I think, it's a great idea for department heads to manage the budget. I don't have a problem with it, but we need to also keep in mind and remember that if we do certain things and we increase employees' salaries within our budget, now we're talking about a cost that's going to keep increasing the next budget year, because, you have your medical, workman's comp, you have, your retirement. So it's not, for example, that, okay, this year it's $12,000. Well, next year it may be $15,000. A year after that, maybe, $18,000. So your budget keeps increasing. And sometimes doing that, and I appreciate what you come up with, it's great. The thing is that, how is it going to hurt your budget next year that now we're accommodating, certain things and certain costs need to come in? I'm sitting up here, I look at this budget, my biggest thing is we need to somehow get our hourly employees to where they need to be for job retention. That's a big thing. We all work for, what do we work for? If we didn't need money, we wouldn't go to work. But we do it, and it sort of tears me apart. The fair and consistency part, I see that. We have, somebody that said, okay, I'm willing to give this on my budget and do this and the other requests, like we've said. So I think that's probably going to be our discussion for us as a county commission, is how are we going to make this better? And how are we going to look at it and keep in mind, if we do this, next year it's going to increase by 3%, 4%.
And those are very real things that happen. Retirement goes up, insurance has a nasty habit of taking big jumps. So I really understand that. And answering Alicia's question, that has really bothered me. So this is the budget that we can live with right now. But if revenues decrease, next budget is less, way less. So what are we going to do then? And I think that it's maybe a conversation that we need to start having, is how are we going to deal with it? Because I'm with you, I'd rather have a discussion with our employees at this point and say, okay, instead of laying people off, we'll probably need to start going the other way and backing salaries off so that we can continue our commitment to all.
At some point, you'll flesh out what you're talking about. Are you actually talking about a pay decrease? Is that what I heard? I thought you said exactly that. That's why I gave you the look.
I am, because
I think he thought you said that too.
There's been other situations in other industries where it's the choice whether to pay the same thing to all employees, or decrease, or decrease. But that would be like the most radical movement in case our budget hit it.
That not giving a pay increase, right? This budget that we're looking at does not include a pay increase. That is a pay decrease. We're already decreasing pay. And I don't want us to forget that.
That is specifically one of the things that I really want to look hard at this budget, to be able to give increases. Okay, so where can we look at? What can we do to give some kind of pay increase? Because certainly, we all go to the store and we see the increases everywhere, and if the pay that we have for our employees remains static, it is a big pain.
Well, and I think your point is well taken, and I think the other piece of that is, how do we balance increases to the mid, for example, for certain individuals, with the fact that everyone's cost of living is going up. And so I think that also has to be part of the discussion.
And that goes back to the fair and consistent pieces, is to do that. And it seems like in any county municipality, anytime that there's pay increases, you're basically just offsetting in this case is the budget still goes up because you're trying to offset not only the cost of living, but your benefits, you know.
So I think we had asked Linda, what would it cost to give every employee $1 increase?
I think it was about 50,000.
Okay, so if that was something that we could find within our budget, and of course, $1 increase for many people would be,
It was a percentage point increase. Not a
I thought it
dollar.
was 1%.
It was a 1%, exactly, it was a 1% increase, not a dollar.
Yeah, there's
Well,
only $1.
I'm sorry, I'm just saying that's what the.
okay, so I misunderstood it, but 1% wouldn't be much of anything.
Well, we gave 1.5 last year, right?
Yeah, and again, I don't think that was.
I agree with that, keeping up with cost of living, better than zero.
Yes, and in this budget right now, we have 0%. That's correct. So,
I think
So, like-
part of us, I think part of this is we really need to take a hard look as far as all of us is in trying to get our hourly employees to somewhere, whether it be a midpoint, whether it be somewhere, but I think we need to do it consistently.
So one other thing that I want to just mention really quick also is that part of what I think we're dealing with in this conversation is, we're talking about fair and consistent for the future. But what we're dealing with is a lack of fairness and consistency in the past, which is making getting to fair and consistent pretty painful. I think we just need to acknowledge that.
yes. So can we fix it?
We're gonna try.
Let's find some revenue. All right, thank you.
Yeah, never mind. And that's the common thing in understand budgets is we don't have the revenue, we don't have the revenue, but this is where we need to stay fair and we need to stay consistent. We don't have the revenue, we need to stay fair and consistent across the board.
Well, one of my ideas was anybody that's not going to get any kind of pay increase. So if our deputies are already going to get a pay increase, whoever gets a pay increase for any reason, how can we give the rest of our employees? So can we turn to all department heads and say, you know what? We need X amount of dollars, so you're going to have to find a way how to cut 5% of your budget. Or something along that nature, because we have a finite budget. We can't squeeze any more. So what do? We just have to rearrange some stuff. So that's just something for us to think about.
That in the face of all the other things we want to do.
Yes.
Exactly. Okay, so we're good with this now.
Yeah, one more item on the salaries. I requested this, and I think you're working it, you said you'd work on it, but for me, I'd rather first get to midpoints, and then in future years talk about general raises. And so you're going to figure out what it would take for us to bring people to midpoints, right? Okay, I'd like that number 2.
Yeah, it would be really helpful, I think, to compare those.
Yep.
And I think part of that, what I would like to see then is a plan in the future for how we're going to do cost of living increases if we have the revenue to do so.
Yes.
If we did something like that. A plan. Which I also want to recognize that I think a great deal of we have this, we did the salary study and, those sorts of things. I think all of those are steps in the direction of fair and consistent employee compensation.
Exactly.
So I just want to acknowledge that. not start from
Maybe
scratch.
it's time to revisit it and look at it, because I know not,
Well, I think we're-
you know, Walt Harrison and that area there.
So we need to make sure that the capacity to do that's in the budget.
And a question for Linda. Anything we do has to have expediency, right? Because budgets are due fairly soon.
The preliminary is due by June 1st. The preliminary and the final is due, August 1st.
So what is the difference between the preliminary and the final? Can changes be made?
Yes.
The changes will be made between the preliminary and final, and the biggest change is going to be our cash balances, which we will have closed our books at the end of June 30.
So we could accept this budget face value and then make adjustments. You know, we don't have to go into a frenzy and try to have something finalized by the end of the month.
Yeah, we'll have to fix it all in 2 weeks. We have a little time to think of some things. So we good with this now? Okay, so let's go to the Sheriff's Department, typo here, but go ahead and Sheriff Raúl Villanueva.
I get the sheriff to come do my budget report, but I do the business. I'm gonna take care of it. First one, the one that I wanted to address was the full-time salary, is 401-05-502. And that would be the step increase. Since I took office and working with Manager Webb and bringing it up, was trying to get our deputies back in the step plan to be compatible with other agencies in Grand County or surrounding agencies. Presently at the time, of course we are 10 deputies short. We oversee Tri-City. Tri-City still doesn't have full coverage, so besides us taking our own calls, we still respond to Tri-City and also assist Silver City on their calls. So we're actually busy. Presently right now we are on 12-hour shifts, and that was the easiest way to have the maximized coverage on patrol. Patrols are number one that's out there in the public, and everyone sees patrol. Their uniforms are in marked units, and they're the ones that are responding to calls. As far as overtime or any critical incidents, I can't control that. And being as short as we are in certain incidents that we've had in the past, I mean, it does create a lot of overtime, especially when we're short-handed. So running with the four deputies per crew, running for the whole county, I mean, they're doing an awesome job with the less deputies that we have, but I mean, it takes a toll on them as well, especially as large as this county is. We try to work with state police, and I'll keep looking with them, but as of right now, pretty much they'll assist, but they don't take calls unless they're dispatched of their own. And of course, the crashes, I mean, the previous administration had an agreement, and it's state police in the area that will assist on the crash, but other than that, our guys are taking the crashes. So by getting the stats on a monthly basis, I mean, you can see the volumes of the call volumes have risen dramatically from crashes to criminal investigations. One of the things, looking at having, once we have our budgets or our deputies in place, we'll be able to go to where we're assigning districts that's going to save the unit cost of time of response, because they will be assigned to a district instead of running in general the way we're running right now. Having 4 on patrol, I just can't have one in the mining, one in the Marinas Valley, and one in the Silver area, because usually you get your domestics, which is always on the rise, and you need a 2-man unit to at least to respond to those. A lot of them are in the rural areas. I mean, we're responding to Mingus or to the Buckhorn area, down to Achita. The good thing with Achita being cross-commissioned with Luna County, they're assisting us as well in regards to that. I really believe, we've lost several deputies. We lost 3 to New Mexico State Police that were outstanding deputies, and we've lost 2 to the District Attorney's Office, and because of the money issues. If you do a comparison between us and Bear Police,
We used to recruit all the time. I mean, I came from the mining district, and I mean, we make 5 cents more than what the Bear PD does. And for their call volume or their jurisdiction versus ours, I mean, it's a remarkable, it's a big difference. So my thing is that I really believe having the seniors that we have and stuff, and having some type of a step program in place that would be very beneficial on retaining the deputies that we have in our office. And being so shorthanded, if we were to implement this step plan, 10 positions aren't even going to benefit the step plan as of yet, because it would be fresh right out of the academy. So I was hoping on this step plan that it would retain our guys and also attract outside agencies to apply with the sheriff's office.
So, Sheriff, it's my understanding that one of the primary challenges you're having is attracting people with experience because you don't have a way of compensating them for their experience when they come in currently? Is that correct?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, that's correct. I'll give you an example of one. We had an applicant out of Tier C that had 4 years of experience. And once we offered the position and we had him at the minimum, he declined the position. So we've had a few, and if you look at some of the applicants that we're getting, mainly that we're getting right now is non-certified. And I mean, to push them to the academy, we're hiring them uncertified, so our office is either going to send them to Western or to Santa Fe to attend the law enforcement academy, which is still enhanced. After the academy is 5 months long, once they come to the sheriff's office, they still have a 9-week program, so before we even release them on their own, it's still going to take some time.
And so you're confident that having this kind of tool, so if I understand this correctly, then what you can do is you can use this tool, you can look at it and say, okay, this person, the example you just used, has 4 years of experience, and so we can start them with this, which would be theoretically commensurate with them, whatever they could get somewhere else.
Yes, ma'am, that'd be correct.
For the same amount of experience.
Correct.
So in other words, State Patrol will not hire them in at the lowest because they're going to take into consideration the 4 years of experience.
Exactly. I can tell you the 3 deputies that we lost to state police, I mean, they're at $26 and plus. Versus our guys from their starting pay at $17 certified, $17.52. So there's a big difference. And I mean, you know, one of the benefits we have is, of course, our insurance. Silver City Police does pay 100% as well. State Police doesn't. But just the money that attracted one of our investigators that we lost to the district attorney's office, it was a matter of pay. And when we tried to explain how the insurance and stuff work, I mean, just the pay alone, which guys that are retiring, or deputies that are retiring, the benefits are great. But PEER's not looking at benefits, they're looking at how much money you make so you can come out with a better return. So in a sense, having the STEP program and getting the pay is going to benefit the deputies once as well. It's going to attract to our office as well as the system and make it better for them when they're retirement.
So, like right now, I'm seeing, this is a proposal. So if you have a deputy that's got 4 to 7 years, it's 1831, right?
Yes, sir.
So what would that pay be and the state police?
State police is still depending on what the years are. So the way the step plan is set is years of experience. So, I mean, the state's going to get pretty much the best package of what they can get. Having something a year, and even Silver City is kind of looking at our step plan as well. about competitive. The great thing about working at the sheriff's office, the jurisdiction, I mean, you have so much jurisdiction that where you can go from one side of the county to the other. Being the consistent and fair, the trainings that we're getting, I mean, God willing, July 1st, we've been working on our narcotics team. I got 2 guys that are actually going to so much higher training that we want to kick off our narcotics team by July 1st. So having different trainings and getting the pay and trying to get the resources that they need to accomplish their missions in law enforcement is all going to be, it's all a package. It's not just the pay, it's the morale, it's how I address my guys, and the way I see my office, it's not me that makes it, it's the deputies that do. I'm at the bottom of this triangle, and my job is to make the best and support them to accomplish what they need to do in that county.
Well, it's just that I see, these are the first 3 steps. State police is, on the average of $10 an hour more.
Right.
So, I mean, if you're supporting a family, $10 an hour is a big difference. So,
I guess I'm a little confused about whether this proposal's fiscal implications, how much it's going to cost, are in your requested budget, or is this on top of, is an additional cost on top of the requested budget?
It's included.
So when I read in the paper something about 100,000, that is not on top of this.
We included the step fund in the recommendation.
Excellent.
which is only, excuse me, I'm sorry.
You have to explain why it's
Yes, that's, I mean, it doesn't seem to be very much.
Okay, it's only $26,000 because we are not going to be paying longevity on these employees if this step plan is adopted. So that's probably, we're about, there's an additional 25, I think, on your longevity with those employees. Anywhere from 1,200 to...
Right, because it's already incorporates longevity.
Correct.
The longer you've been there, the higher your rate.
Correct.
So going back to the conversation that we had just a few minutes ago, so we're talking about an increase of $100,000 a year.
No.
Is that correct?
No.
Or is it $100,000 to get it started this year, and then beyond that it will be? Can we predict that?
We're looking at possibly that being an average, but it's difficult to be able to budget. For example, he has 10 down now, so all we could do is take the picture as it is today and budget what it would cost to fit them in this. But I mean, obviously, we're not going to see too much of an increase if you have 10 deputies that fall in the 0 to 3. So you're only looking at increases every 3 years, and it's going to depend on how many more he loses, or so that
How
was
many experienced people they are able to hire, etc.
right. So that's the best piece I can come up with is looking at it today.
Did you make some assumption about hires, about filling vacancies, like where they would fall in these plans?
No, we did not. I don't know how to make that assumption. He can assume that he could get someone with experience, but
Well,
we don't know
so
that.
usually, yes, you've got 10 slots. I have to do this with the school, right? I don't know what these are going to be hiring, and their salaries range a lot.
So we looked at, I think the fiscal impact of the first was $124,000, which after we started looking at what we have now and trying to guesstimate that, taking away the longevity that they get now, this was the initial impact, is the basically 27,000 plus benefits.
But that is based on filling vacancies.
Yes.
Yes, is that right?
Yes, filling the 10
So we
vacancies.
had to come up with that number, you had to assume something about where those vacancies fall in this chart.
If I may just comment on that, since January, we've been posting these positions. And in the polls that we've had 2 certified. That is it.
Right.
Out of 15 that are uncertified.
So that's data we could use to estimate.
Exactly, because all these uncertified that we're actually in the middle of testing and doing a background investigation on, they're going to fall under the 0 to 3.
Perfect.
So realistically speaking, you could assume that probably 9 of your 10 or 8 of your 10 are not going to be experienced.
That's correct.
And my question is whether this $26,760 figure came from such and such.
Yes, that's what I just asked. So we did finally answer your question.
Okay.
One more question, sir. Do you have any plans to do any restructuring or anything like that?
Restructuring now, and I met with manager Webb and I showed her some of the visions that we have. One of the restructures, the main, of course, is patrol. I don't want to lose deputies. And the main reason, having, the way we're set up right now, if we had full staff, we would have 7 per patrol per troop. Having those 7 and having 2 in each district, that would give us the coverage from pulling into the Buckport, Mill Creek, the Gila Cliff area, where we would also be assigning into the Mingres, San Juan area up on State Road 61, and still we would have our 3 in coverage, also including the white signal on 90 South and also the Hachita area, where we would be able to have the number of coverage. That's our biggest thing in the rural areas is they don't see many deputies, and it's hard right now with running 3 per deputies, and they're getting calls constantly that they're not able to go to these areas. But at least doing frequent patrols and having our units visible out there makes a difference. It deters. And so my goal is, first of all, is to concentrate on the patrol division to have the adequate manpower to complete our jobs. And again, like I said, for now, on our manpower, I need it there, especially when we have like Tri-City that doesn't have the 24/7 coverage, or we're assisting Silver City on different calls, which they help us as well. But you end up on, you have 3 people on duty, and you have a domestic in one of the Tri-Cities, you have 2 deputies there, so now you have just 1 deputy on their own covering shift. State Police goes home at 3 in the morning, so the county's ours at 3, we have no assistance. So with that, my biggest goal is to increase the manpower on patrol division.
Okay.
And like I said, July 1st, we'll be kicking off our narcotics team as well.
So you mentioned the district idea. So the way I understand it, you are too short-handed right now to really divide up your deputies into districts, but that is your goal?
My goal, right now, you're having 3 on duty.
Right.
Or 4 at the max.
Right.
So trying to assign 2 to the mining and 2 is so it makes it difficult, because if one deputy has a call, we're switching back. Pretty much we're running all over the county from call to call.
So currently, you're just like, it's kind of like the tail wagging the dog.
Yes, ma'am.
Essentially.
That's correct.
But the district idea, so I'm interested in the district idea because in my mind, it seems like if you can get your staff up to where you need it to be to cover the county in a district idea, it's not just that they're not running all over the county, but there is some deterrence effect, there's also some community policing effect and that sort of thing if you have people in regular districts, right?
Most definitely. We met with Misha and with Daniel, the mapping and planning, and we've actually had maps already in place that we've broken Grand County into 4 districts. And, right now the community policing, pretty much the only community policing we have is the DARE program. Our deputies are pretty much going from call to call, so the community policing is not there, which is very important, and having that rapport with different, whatever district they're assigned to. But the benefits of having the districting, not just the community policing, but our units, the mileage that we're putting from one side of the county to the other is going to stop. And the response time going to, you're in the mining district on a call, and the next call is in Tyrone. Having these districts in place, the dispatch time when one officer arrives is going to be shortened.
I'm just going to mention this. I meant to mention this earlier, actually when we were talking to one of the other departments, but I'm sure this is completely applicable to your department as well. I think someone said it briefly, but I just want to emphasize the fact that, overtime is the most inefficient, even though people might really like overtime because it's more pay in their pockets. From an efficiency point of view, is not a good thing, because people, and especially in law enforcement, when you have to have good reflexes and good response time and all that kind of stuff, overtime, running a department on overtime is just a really bad thing. And that's just one of the things we need to look at, I think, in the bigger picture.
Creates a liability.
Right. It's that just overtime is not a good use of our revenues.
Now, this overtime is not Stone Guard overtime, right? That's in a separate fund?
That's correct.
So, on top of everything you're saying, there's that overtime, right? I agree with you.
Right. So, Sheriff, I just want to thank you for the amount of work that you've put on into this, and for the quality of your reporting and conversations that we're having.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. I have a question about the capital outlay this year, 88,000. What's that?
That's the CAD system.
Oh, right.
What is CAD? See, CAD is drawing.
Well, computer-aided dispatch, it is, like dispatch is looking at upgrading their CAD system. Each of the law enforcement agencies is looking at doing the same, and this would be our portion to be able to have the equipment that interfaces with dispatch.
And that, as I remember correctly, we've had this conversation in the past, that makes all of the law enforcement agencies be able to interact with each other and know where people are and that kind of thing, right? It will also increase the efficiency of what's happening.
One of the benefits that we'll also have, with our CAD systems, when we do a report writing, we can do them in our units, but we don't have like a spell check it's just an old system. But even with this one, we'd even have cited dispatch. So where dispatch actually, you know exactly where your units are at, dispatch would send you the call, and we would respond by pressing a button instead of, unfortunately, in Grand County, the majority of the people that have scanners are the ones that shouldn't have them, and they know where we're at. So a lot of our frequent patrols that we do, because we need to show the consistency that we were there, or instead of calling dispatch 20 times a night on the cell phone, our guys call over the radio. Well, it's great. It's damn if you do and damn if you don't, because it's showing that our deputies are there, but at the same time, it's also letting the next suspect, they're like, hey, they're gone, or they're in the area, and not to be there. So this will be a very beneficial tool, this whole CAD system, this newer version of it.
So I have a couple of questions real quick. So what was the total number after all? Was it 100 and what? 500,000? What?
No, 26. It's 26.
So it still ends up at 26? Plus the benefits of that, okay. And then my other question...
Close to 100.
Okay. The other question, what's CH security contracts?
That is courthouse security contracts. That's for the courthouse security officers that we're required to have.
Okay.
That are unfunded mandates.
Okay. And then we don't have that, or the county doesn't have, the sheriff's department doesn't have the bulletproof vest grant anymore? No? Okay.
So, all right, I got a little lost on what you just said, and maybe it ties into the question I was about to ask.
So you don't,
The salaries are going up 26,000. My rule of thumb would be another 10,000 in benefits, but you said another 70,000.
Well, if you look at the increase in PERA,
Yeah.
and so they're on a different plan, so we pay more into PERA for law enforcement than we do for...
That's not a result of the step plan, right? That's a result...
Yes.
Oh, it is?
Well, right, because their salaries go up, so
There's a huge disproportion.
So what I said was it's about $100,000. So if you look at salaries only, it's basically 27, plus you have to tack all the benefits onto that, so yes, it is.
Okay, so there's a problem, and maybe we can figure this out.
There, in addition to the step plan, there was that increase in PRA that was mandated by the state.
That must be about 50 of the 62,000.
And I don't know what
I think, yeah.
It would be about
Yeah, right, okay, that would make sense. So the cost of the step plan,
Well, I was looking at this total.
I realize that, but, we are charged with evaluating different aspects of
It's
this.
interesting.
Without the step plan, we'd still be seeing PERA going up quite $50,000. In the step plan itself, looks to me like probably more like 40,000, but by their math, it's about 50,000. Somewhere between their salary and benefits.
And then they're probably, they're on step 3 because the public safety sensitive, so that for PR.
So I think that's a really important clarification because, the paper, the press, is saying that it's $100,000.
So that was the worst case, and of course the press always misconstrues everything I say. So I said worst case scenario, that is what we have looked at as what the financial impact would be, is that.
So I'm just saying that I think it's really important for the public to know that half of what we're talking about is state-mandated PDRA increases.
So, okay, can somebody give me a number, approximately?
For what? $500,000.
12. $12?
No, $12.
So what's the step plan and everything, approximately 60?
I had it figured at around 50, so.
And I've got 40.
And I got,
Well, you have got 70.
and I spent my money on Linda, and I said 59.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, one of the two other line items that I wanted to address on the ammunition budget had increased to double it. Presently, right now, the DPS requires law enforcement to certify once a year. That is it. I don't think that's enough training, and I'd like to at least do it where we have the certification that's required by the state. Also doing stress courses. What a stress course would be, Commissioner or Chairman Boyce would be more aware, but they're running a mile or two and they're doing push-ups and sit-ups, and there's setups where either you're going to targets, you're disassembling your weapon, and just an all-out adrenaline rush to have our deputies ready and prepared for any type of critical incident. The other thing that we're looking at, talking with Chief Portillo with Silver City Police Department, here in June, we will be activating or starting our training as a special response team between us and Silver City Police Department. And after the week of June 10th, we'll actually start testing our deputies and officers with Silver PD on the assessments required to meet the special response team. I think that all the critical incidents that we've had in Grant County and stuff, it's great to rely on state police. It takes 4 to 5 hours for holding a scene for New Mexico State Police to bring their TAC team. I think it's more beneficial, and this is our county, and I want to do it this way where we have our own TAC team. In the past, I served for 4 years in the TAC team that we had at the Sheriff's Office, and the past administration set the program down, but it's going to take some time. It's going to take a lot of training. Having Under Sheriff Watkins coming from Gallup, we've reached out to instructors that won't even charge for the training as long as we pay their per diem in the motel. They'll come instruct our guys. So, I mean, we've been looking at different areas for instructors and stuff, but that would be my justification of trying to get more ammunition. Because once we do get the TAC team, I mean, one of their specialties and their qualifications is being a top-notch shooter. They have to be an expert on their qualifications, and their training is more intense, and there's more, it's a monthly training that is required by the state, and they're shooting, I mean, they'll be constantly shooting, throwing bullets down range.
Go ahead, Ms. Ford.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, can you absorb some of this through your LEPF fund, or have you allocated that for other?
No, we would be able to absorb something.
So we're looking at 22,000 requested, 10.5 is recommended. Right. Hey, and let me ask you this question real quick. Are you coming to the end of your biannual year, or did you just start another biannual year?
No, this is where my training budget is going up, or the money. Biannual, we'll be starting a biannual year in June, in July and August. And with what the state's mandating, we're setting it up for 2 weeks. And most of our training are in-house instructors. We'll have a few, but the majority will be in-house instructors. But yeah, that's going to take some time. And every 2 years, you're required to go through defensive tactics. We haven't done it in about 5 years, so that's another thing that we'll have to be doing. That's going to take time to do the defensive tactics for our office.
Are there, I assume you mean tactical teams when you say TAC team?
Yes, ma'am, the special response team.
Sorry, that's just not up with the lingo. Are there, so one of the things that I think we have done, not your department specifically, but I'm saying this in the broadest sense when I say we, the county, has not taken advantage of a lot of grant opportunities. Are there grant opportunities that will help with the training and expense of getting your deputies up to speed on some of this stuff?
Yes, ma'am, there are some grants and Lieutenant Burns is working on them. One of the main, like our HIDA training that we're having, that's 100% covered by the feds, so our county's getting reimbursed. So, as a matter of fact, I'm getting ready to send 2 deputies for narcotics investigations and interview techniques that's all provided by HIDA, and it's 100% reimbursed to us. Lieutenant Burns is looking on different training items. We're looking into grants, especially now with most of our stuff that we had from the special response team when I was on, like our plates and stuff, it's a totally different tactical uniform that we use on the SWAT team, where you had Kevlars and cover your face and the gloves and knee pads and all this. So we're trying to refurbish some of the stuff that is still usable, and we're looking into grants to buying different equipment. Just so you're aware of whatever, we also have assault rifles that we use, the 45 Storm assault rifles that the TAC team was assigned to and stuff like that. So we're looking at everything in that, and also grants to assist us with that training or any other trainings that do come up in the future.
If I can remember right, there was a situation in Hurley where you had to call state police, which took hours, which really, I saw a flurry of misinformation going back and forth and all that, but I think the majority of that was because you had to wait so long for the state police team to get there.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner, that's correct. Once we actually secured the crime scene, and at that time not having a TAC team, we had to wait, and so New Mexico State Police would have to assemble from Las Cruces and certain areas to actually initiate that operation.
Okay.
So, what determines that? So you're talking about a crime scene that you have to call the state police in for, that takes a certain, what determines what kind of crime scene requires that kind of response?
Say a barricaded subject, and pretty much in the situation that we're speaking in Hurley, we had a barricaded subject. Due to the past history that we've dealt with them, there's possible weapons inside the residence. Instead of just storming, we'd rather wait and take our time and do it the right way, and God forbid, like this one turned out well, no one got hurt. Now, say a situation, you have a barricaded subject and there's people in there. We're not waiting for no SWAT team, our guys are going in. And same with, say, God forbid it happens in the school or any community area or building, we're storming in there. We won't be waiting for a TAC team. But having your TAC team in place or having your deputies, I know when I was on the team, we carried everything in our unit. So if I was on duty and we had a mission, I didn't have to go home and change, and I mean everything was right there that I could dress and go to the mission that we were assigned to. So I think it benefits the county. The trainings that we're pushing, and I know I've requested for extra monies on the trainings. It's a better tool, it's a better resource, and as far as our deputies when they're investigating whatever types of crimes, or, I mean, if one of my criminal investigators, I'm not going to send them to a training that's going to resolve for what patrol duties are, and vice versa with our patrol. So I want to specialize them in the trainings that they have to affect the best investigations that they can do. And the biggest thing is it's going to save us on torts as well. On the tort claims.
Tort claims. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions for the sheriff? Thank you, sir. Okay, moving on to fleet maintenance. Mr. Moore.
We're pretty much in budget constraints tonight. I did ask her for an increase of 40,000 in the road fleet maintenance, but that was due to our aging, trucks that we have. Was talking with Linda, if we're able to get these new trucks, I think we can leave our budget flat for maintenance.
So you wouldn't need the 40,000 in the fleet maintenance budget if we bought the new dump trucks, is that what you're saying?
Yes, that's the reason I asked for the increase is because of the aging truck fleet that we have.
And you guys are looking into how to, down the road, right, replace, vehicles and stuff like that.
Yes, sir. Sam's been working really hard. He's gotten, Randy has sent, all of his departments, vehicles, their fleet, and he's working hard on it, getting a spreadsheet built, as far as the age on them, the mileage on them and stuff like that. And later on, I'll be presenting that to you all on there. So nothing else, we can try and get it on the ICIP for every department, not just one department, but for everybody's department.
Knowing that you guys probably have to leave here in a while, do you want to go down to your other part, the road department?
Okay. On the road department, there was a few increases. One of them was on overtime. It's just such a big variable right there, depending on Mother Nature and everything, and I just asked for $3,000 more in overtime for that. Office supplies, I've been having to buy a computer every year, so I just asked for a couple $100 to be able to cover that computer. The biggest part would be the fuel. The fuel prices just gone up tremendously, and nobody has any control over that. I requested $150, and it looks like they recommended $170 on it. There was a reduction in the utilities of a couple $1,000. Operating expense went up because of the new clothing allowance and new boot allowance, according to the union contract. A couple $1,000 on the bridges, culverts, and Caligars, because there is a couple of bridges I know we've got to replace. They've got wooden decks on them. And on the inspection reports from NMDOT, I've got to replace a couple of the wooden decks on there. And the wood for those bridge decks are pretty expensive. And the only other increase was the professional services of about $1,500.
You mentioned the fuel, but could you say again why it's almost 26% increase in the fuel?
Well, it's just we don't have no control over the fuel prices. I mean,
So we're just being conservative?
Right.
Because our fuel prices haven't gone up 26% so far.
Well, we base it off the current usage, what we're paying now, and we're not getting any indication, based on some of our other, fuel-related items in the road department, that's going to go down. So either budget for it now or come back and ask for more money to budget for it now. We increased it to 20,000 based upon year-to-date expenditures on fuel now.
Okay.
So we were projecting to spend more in that range for the 50 requested. So that's why we increased it.
Thank you. Okay, nothing else?
Any other questions? Thank you. Are you done, Mr. Moore?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Mr. Diaz, General Services.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. As you can see, my budget is pretty much flat. As last year, there was an increase in postage. General Service Department handles all the postage for the entire county, which is all the departments, including detention center inmates. So, as you know, the post office, you never know, it has been going up on stamps, and so we have the meter, and even from that, we get a small discount because our postage is metered. So there was a $8,500 increase in that. Other than that, it's pretty flat.
That's it?
That's it. It's easy when you're not an elected official. Sorry, elected official. Not anymore, either.
Can we come back to information technology at some
Point, is that wrapped into something you tell us?
And I don't know why she's under, or why she's not under.
And I don't need to insert her now, but she's not yet. She's
I
not
will
there.
try and cover it.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, so do we have any questions for Mr. Lynn? Thank you. Thank you. And we're going to go ahead and go into planning department. Raj.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. So my budget has a few increases in it. I have a little bit of increase in the telephone expense, which is actually for some iPads for new GPS units. We purchased a couple of GPS units with some grant funding and some budgeted funding last year, and now we've got the iPads because they are Bluetooth to an iPad. It's going to allow us to take some photographs. One's going to go to the highway, to the road department, so they can photograph signs and different things as part of our asset management plan. So just a cost increase there. You can see on the grant match monies, no money was spent. That $40,000 was allocated for the shooting range, and I've reported several times how we're still trying to get that permit done, so I'm just requesting that that money stay in there. On the professional services, that went up because of the drainage study for Wind Canyon. That's $77,500 cost to do that drainage study. So I've asked to put that into my professional services budget this year. And then the training has gone up because we're working on a GIS certificate training for Daniel. It's an online training, and it's pretty expensive there, so I've asked for my training budget to go up on that. It's the same training that Tracy Burnsett has found and is taking through the assessor's office, and it's online through UCLA. So, any questions?
Mr. Chairman. Details about the drainage study, please.
Okay. So we've had 2 years now, and we're going to be coming up to monsoon season this year, where the monsoons have hit that Wind Canyon very hard.
You're talking about around the car property?
Yes. So Fleming Tank.
That whole area?
Yes, and Earl's crew has had to go out there and rebuild the road. We've had some undercutting on the low water crossing, so we've reached out, just like what we've already done on Bandoni. We reached out to one of our on-call engineering services, and we had the money in the budget to get Bandoni done this year, which is the same thing. And of course, that one we're putting on to the call for projects with NMDOT, because that one's already got the engineering complete. So this one we didn't have the funding in the budget this year to get done, so I'm asking for that to happen this year. They'll be looking at up to, I think we're going as recent as 50-year floods, so that we can have that drainage study done that's going to help us to identify what needs to be done culvert-wise, different aspects. So there'll be engineering that goes in there. There's some look at putting in some, maybe some concrete barriers upstream that will slow that water down. There's just a lot of things that have to be looked at. We don't know what the answer is going to be, but that's what the study is for.
Well, I've been out there a couple of times, so a couple of questions. So the first is, am I correct in assuming that that the study and whatever work that needs to be done as a result of that study will not be complete by monsoon season this year?
That is a pretty good assumption.
I figured. What did it cost us last year, approximately, to deal with that area? In materials and labor and all that sort of stuff.
Commissioner,
just off the top of my head, probably about $5,000 to go back out there and repair some of the water crossing part. I think it's pretty structurally sound now to be able to handle anything that comes down where the concrete low water crossing is. Now, as far as the other crossing up there coming across that private property is a different story.
Okay. And, so you're talking about, looking at it from a 50-year flood aspect, but how would you characterize what happened last year? In terms of that, was it a 50-year flood last year? How would you characterize that? Normal? Just, I know what I'm asking you is, this is like a whack, right? But just to give me some idea, I was out there immediately afterwards, both times that whole thing happened, and, just conceptually, is that what it's going to be like every year until we fix it? What do you think?
Commissioner, I think that there's a lot of water comes down that canyon, comes all the way from the top of the mountain for one thing. But what I've been noticing the last couple of summers is some of these downpours that we're having is just in one concentrated spot, like Wind Canyon, they'll get like 4 inches of rain in about 30 minutes, 45 minutes.
So like a microburst kind of thing?
So, and that's the same thing that happened up there on Bandoni. Whether it may never rain like that again out there.
Right.
But that's what I've noticed has been happening the last couple of summers. And those are the kind of rains that really destroy stuff.
So if we do this engineering study, so you've made some suggestions about the kinds of things that you think might be called for in mitigation. Is that work that you'll be able to do, Earl, or is that stuff that we'll have to contract out?
I think it's stuff that we'll be able to do. It's just getting it at the right time when we've got time to do it. But I think everything that might be designed out there, I believe that we can do it ourselves.
Okay. And so, I can't believe this is going to come out of my mouth, but it is. Is this something where we could do the study and then, never mind. I'm answering my own question because we have no way of predicting the next rain like that, so.
Correct. And what we did ask the engineer is that from this, it's study and full engineering, but the engineering is going to have only the estimates of materials that are needed because we are anticipating doing it in-house. So we're not asking them to be a contract manager or a project manager, go out to bid. None of that's in this cost here, but there are actually 2 drainages that come in.
Right.
So that's one of the things that's made it a little bit more complicated. And I will just point out that we, in my office, we handle the subdivisions. We haven't had any. This is a subdivision that was put in years ago, but based on the information that we're getting and me now being the certified floodplain manager, these will be looked at a lot differently when somebody wants to put in a subdivision because this was not designated through FEMA as a floodplain, but obviously we've got a problem in there and we have that ability to make those requirements on a subdivider to do this study ahead of time, especially before we accept the subdivision or accept the roads.
Right, so that was going to be part of my next question. But so is it possible that to have this engineering study written up in a way that would make phased recommendations? So if we need to divide up the cost and that sort of thing over 1 or 2 or 3 years, is it possible to have them say, well, this is what we recommend you do first and that sort of thing? Will that be included in that?
I think that's something that we can have in discussion with them because any project we can always look at phasing based on funding, and if that's something that once we get the initial cost or the materials estimate from the study, we can then go back and ask them if they think that there's something that could be done or one portion of it that's more important than another. But right now, that's not what we've asked them to do. We've asked them to give us the whole thing.
And I'm not sure how you phase in blood control.
Right.
I
So I said we could just-
anticipate them coming back with some sort of phase, and I'm not sure.
It's either do it or not do it.
Yeah.
You could start at the top of the watershed and come down. Right.
I have another question now, just fell out of my head.
Maybe whether Misha's now a supporter of zoning.
Misha's now what?
Nothing.
Okay, any other questions?
Oh, I was going to say, I'm trying to remember what year this was, but I believe it was the beginning of last year that you cut a position.
Yes.
Am I right about the timing?
That is correct. It was almost 2 years ago.
Almost 2 years ago now, okay. That's still been working fine for you?
That position has been completely eliminated. So yeah, that is still working well.
Thanks.
I remember my question. Is that area, is the study area, part of the Fleming Tank Road area that we accepted for county maintenance
Yes,
a
it
year
is.
ago?
It's Fleming Tank and Wind Canyon. Both were accepted a couple years ago.
And they've had a
Should've
special
rained.
assessment, right?
Right, should have rained before that. Okay.
All right, thank you.
Looking here, no one else not here, but she had, and I completely forgot what she had said, but looking at the budget, there's really nothing, really changing other than she requested more for per diem and mileage and per diem.
Right.
I don't remember why or she even mentioned that, so.
She just, excuse me, Mr. Chairman, Commissioner, she just requested to do a change, to just, I think it was maybe PRA where she decreased it because she's already retired, so she doesn't need a line that one item, and put it into mileage and per diem. There's some.
And why don't we go along? You're not recommending we go along with that?
No, we are. She just moved it from one line to the other. She just
That's right, that's right.
So it looks like
PRA, right, okay.
It looks like your recommended one still has the old number, doesn't reflect her shuffling.
I see shuffle.
I see 3954 in PERA
That is correct.
instead of 1,955 that she's requesting. So
That is no net.
I agree. We might as well just reflect her changes, I think, in our budget. We should elect more retired people.
Okay. Moving on, is that any other questions on that item? Okay, so we'll go down back to Al, airport manager, Rebecca.
I thought I was next. Chairman, Commissioners. First, we'll start with our revenue account. You'll see that a couple of my requests are a little bit different than what's been recommended. On our ground hangar lease, the recommendation was $10,000, and I had requested $7,000. Last year, I had a tenant who hadn't paid rent for many years, and I had him catch up. And so we won't have that big boost in that line item. So I think that the $7,000 is more appropriate. Other than that, then my request for rents is $5,000 less, and that's based upon the fact that if I do all my numbers, $42,000 is the best I can get, and I don't always have everything rented. So I think $40,000, that's why I had requested that. Then we go down to other revenue. $8,000 is, I had requested none, and they requested $8,000. We had a group of researchers that have been coming out and using the airport, and they've been generously paying for using the facility. I don't have any guarantee that I will have those people again next year. So I look to, have different uses at the facility and charge for them whenever I can, but there's no guarantee that I'm going to be able to get that. So, any questions on the revenue side?
Do you all talk before bringing this to us? I mean, all those things seem like things that could have been worked out by a phone call. Yeah.
That was submitted.
Yeah, I put some notes on a spreadsheet, but we didn't have an opportunity to sit down and talk.
Okay. Do you have it, initially, does that, all of her adjustments to revenue make sense?
Yes, and so we'll make those adjustments per her request. And so we typically have someone who really looks at the revenue side, and Linda and I usually guesstimate based on year-to-date activity, so thank you.
So that's 16,000 down.
I'll do my best, but, all right. Then we'll go on to our expense account. We have an addition of a full-time person that started here recently, and so you'll see an increase in our full-time salaries. There's also a decrease in our part-time salaries. I had gone through a series of part-time employees, and like other people have said, you get someone in, you get them trained, and they're gone. And so with our extended schedule with advanced air, we really needed to have that third-time body. We were kind of scrambling back and forth. Randy and I were covering a whole lot of flights. So having that third person, you'll see an increase there. I had also requested an increase for my employees, and that is not reflected on here, so I'll just leave that there. I know there's other discussions going on. Further down on...
Hold on, so what you did is your part-time salary, you just moved it over to the full-time, sort of like Steve did, right?
And then there would be an increase, obviously, from half to full, so there's a little bit extra.
And so just to clarify that, we did that under the current budget, and it's just reflected there, because she's had the revenues to pay for, more than pay for, the full-time employee. So that's already in the current budget. This is just reflecting the change. We need that change this year.
Okay, another increase I have is for mileage and per diem. Currently, at the airport, Randy is our only ARF-certified firefighter, and so, I have 3 employees now that I'm going to have to send down to Dallas to be trained, and so it's a week-long class, so I figured that I needed to increase the per diem to cover that. Down in my maintenance categories, I just did some shifting to make it more reflect what we actually have on the ground and where I'm using the money, so just those are kind of rearranged. And then the other increase you're going to see is in the uniforms, again, just to meet with the union contract.
And the group insurance is because of a new full-time employee.
How many vests do you go through a year?
I don't know why it says vests on there. You know.
And our software, this is,
I'm going to do it every day.
I thought you put some in my lunch bill from there. That's hilarious. I shouldn't say that.
That's it. Any questions?
Thank you for the good job.
Thank you.
Commissioner Salas, any questions? Thank you. One budget, so.
That means we don't need a budget for that.
That's what I said.
No, I was going to point out one thing that I already asked about, but in case you all look at it and your eyes do the same thing my eyes did, there's a $600,000 increase in one of those lines. Maybe. Yeah. I was just bringing it up because at some point you might see it and go, wait a minute, I didn't ask about that. But that is the shift of expenses from indigent care to county detention that we talked about a meeting ago, I believe. And it doesn't match up 100%, so there's some net increase apparently. But
It was just a rough estimate.
Yeah.
And there were, I wanted to bring up, he requested a salary increase to increase the positions that will be required for the accreditation process. It's requested, however, it's not in the recommendation. I don't know how you want to handle that. If you are truly set on us moving forward with accreditation, it is going to require some additional employees, which we budgeted at, just the salary is $81,156 roughly. We didn't include that. I really don't, I don't know if you want to do a budget adjustment later on, or you want us to move that over to the recommended. I'm not exactly sure, but that's the whole reason for his request to increase the salary line item is for those positions.
And how confident are you, is he, that that's the exact number?
We don't know that for certain. What we've tried to do is look at it in the most, I hate to say the word efficient, but short of looking at it any other way, is how can we best utilize promoting some existing employees that are in a supervisory capacity and being able to hold those positions more accountable. And then it's the addition of, so there would be 2 promotions and then the addition of 2 officers, which we are required under the accreditation process to have classification officers. We don't have those currently. So we're trying to do these. They tell us that we should have anywhere from 8 to 10 additional officers, but we've tried to think outside the box. Yeah. There's this staffing formula that comes down kind of very similar to what, the assessor looks at, that this is the model. But a lot of it has to do with how your facility is laid out, how it's designed. There are some workarounds, where your control centers are, things of that nature. I've always used that as a guideline in the past, but never really fully staffed based on this.
But the difference is here, somebody else gets to accredit us, right?
Right, but we're working.
The assessor's office.
Right, so we're working. We're having conversations with that accreditation team as to what we're proposing, that we utilize this. We have not got a definitive answer back from them yet. That that will suffice, but we think it will, just on initial informal conversations. For sure, we have to have those additional 2 officers.
Would that be the full year amount?
Yes.
And we're not likely to start this process on July 1.
No, we're not. But that's the other, we don't know at what point we're through, your accreditation, you can take up to 2 years. We were looking at it very aggressively. I think he was looking at it too aggressively, in my opinion. So yes, that's a full year, but not knowing where that would fall in and how we've tried to do as much work up front to streamline the process, but I want to make sure that, we certainly aren't missing any big items. That's why I told them to back off being quite as aggressive as they were. I don't think it was a realistic timeline. So not sure how you want to handle those positions at this point in time, or if you want to wait. We can always look at that in the final budget. We can have further conversations around where we are. You do have to approve our application to go through the accreditation process. We can do that between now and final budget, and then you can incorporate this in the final budget if you so choose.
How much is this accreditation costing us? Do you have a figure number for that?
Well, that's the first figure as far as staff. We're currently working, we're trying to do all of the facility upgrades that will be required as far as the kitchen equipment. There are some privacy issues, some minor renovations to some of the cells to meet the requirements. We're trying to utilize the bond money to do that, so we don't have that hit to basically this is the general fund because we make a huge transfer out of there, but trying to offset those costs through the bond funds and through part of that, the security system is one of the reasons other than it being old, we have to redo all of that to be in compliance with what's required. So really it's more staffing that we'll have to continue to, we can't hire these just for this process and then let them go. So what we're trying to accomplish is the hit to the budget being solely staffing and the other costs to the facility being taken care of through the bond monies. That was the goal, trying to make this as painless as possible. The actual application, I think, is like $1,500.
Remind us why we want to be accredited.
we would want to be accredited because of, well, first off, we would get a decrease in our insurance premiums. But what I think is most important is we have a second set of eyes watching what we're doing, making sure that our policies are current and up to date, that we actually are required to follow a set of standards. The state of Mexico doesn't have detention standards for the state. There are no detention standards. So this is, so INMAC realized that several years ago. And so this is just an extra level of security for us to say that yes, we do this, we do this, we do this, and hopefully eliminate reduce some of our liability, ideally reduce some of our lawsuits. Also, one of the things we just learned this last year, and I don't know if you guys remember the conversation, in the way that the insurance coverage works for law enforcement, which detention falls into law enforcement, is there's a level of reinsurance. So because of all of the lawsuits that have happened across the state with county detention centers, the company, and I just went blank on who that is, Munich, who is providing our reinsurance, chose not to provide any, so there's I believe it's a $5 million level of reinsurance, and that's only going to be offered to those facilities who are accredited. Ours is not, so we only have a $1 million level of reinsurance, which is not very much when you look at the amount that counties are sued under failure to, provide adequate medical or adequate mental health, or the dollar figure that's associated with lawsuits against detention centers. So to me, that's critically important. Having that $5 million limit versus $1 million that's the most enticing part for me. And of course, that was something that we learned just this year, that we don't have that amount of coverage. So I think it's a beneficial program. Like I said, it's another set of eyes that stay on us to help us, stay up to date with trends, policies, etc.
Is it an annual reaccreditation?
I believe it's 2 years. 2 years. Don't quote me on that, but I think it's 2.
I'm very familiar with accreditation and worked on accreditation before. So what are the plans built into this? And I understand manpower. I mean, for everything for us to keep going is manpower. But have you sat down and understand accreditation, what needs to be turned in, what needs to be followed, what documentation, justification, do we have a plan, or does Mr. Carrillo have a plan, or has he gotten with you to assure that once this accreditation and in this costly process, I mean, it's very beneficial that it stays up to par and that there's some accountability pieces to this so we don't lose our accreditation. And this sort of the conversations that we've had before is we have equipment there for the county. We have certain things, like the cameras, they haven't been maintained, they need to be replaced. So here we are now, we're going to replace them. So in 2 years, when this comes up again, when they come to do their inspection, follow up on Steve, what do we have in place to say that's not going to continue to happen, that things aren't going to fall through the crack to where we lose accreditation or that we able to maintain the equipment that's there, we're able to maintain, the standards that they have to live by, who's going to hold that accountable? Has he put anything like that to you, any type of strategic plan, any other than let's just follow the accreditation? I understand that.
He is working on that. He's given me a couple documents that I've sent back and asked for those to be expanded on in further detail. I will tell you that as far as using the cameras and the security equipment,
just one example.
Well, it just, what we're doing now is we're making sure that we have our maintenance agreements in place and that we're staying on top of making sure that they're upgraded when it's required that they be upgraded. The equipment that was in there was installed when the jail was built, and when those initial maintenance contracts expired, the county, for whatever reason at that point, chose not to have those ongoing maintenance contracts. So it was another example of this just band-aided together, and this camera broke, so let's replace it. It was just, and then our DVRs were going out. Let's just try to band-aid it rather than have a plan. So we do have a maintenance plan in place to make sure that we stay up with those. So to say that he has provided me with a strategic plan other than following the guidelines, not at this point. We're having active conversations about, look, we can't just do this and just pretend that, one of the things is we will have, one of the positions that is a promotion is that you are required to have an accreditation officer, and that is his responsibility to make sure that our policies stay up to date. One of the other things is we are looking at our medical services contract, and that's part of some of the increase. That's why there's a little flop in there, is to make sure that we are having the adequate medical that's required and based on a lot of the needs that we're seeing. So that's another piece, just to make sure that we're having that, because that's really a key component, is how are we taking care of them, and are we providing all of the, so that's another piece that will ensure that, that part is being taken care of.
I'm all for the program, it's great. The benefits, are alone are great. That it's sort of like when we talk about salaries, once we give somebody a raise, that's a cost that we're gonna have to really monitor and continually help keep that accreditation.
And I share your concerns, and I do press him very heavily to make sure that it's not just a fleeting thought, so that we have a plan in place and how we continue making sure that we receive this in the future.
And I think we can ask NMC to do audits for us, and not wait the 2 years. I think we can, and I don't know if that's part of our.
Probably have to be a fine about it.
Yes.
I do. The last special management audit we had was at my request. In addition to, we have an annual special management audit, but I can request an NMC to come in at any time, and I have done that, and they've willingly done that in a time frame that's, how quickly do you want it done? So they've been very gracious. At any time I've asked them to come in, and I do typically do that more than just what's required, because I want to make sure that I have another set of eyes that are experts that can give me that feedback to ensure that we're moving in the right direction.
Because of anything, the concern for us to keep accredited there, for me, is probably one of our number one issues, that we not only get accredited but continue it. So I go with you.
That's what I'm worried about, is once you achieve that accreditation, now it's going to be upon us to make sure that we're here doing everything we can to support that accreditation.
Because I think any lawsuit that's going to come out of there, for whatever reason, you will have to have that reinsurance, because I could just see them going way over $1 million.
Well, I think, the question is Mike clear that if we go to all this expense and effort to get accreditation on the detention center, is he clear that if we didn't get reaccredited for some reason, that was his fault, but that's going to cost him his job?
Didn't want to go there, but he said.
With the expense, I guess I'm repeating, but you're right. It's the expenses there. Once you get into it, you need to stay with us for, and it's not only from us, it's going to take a lot of financial commitment. Okay, are we done with that one? Any other questions on the detention center? Commissioner Department.
So, really, Linda did a pretty good job of going over this in the work session. We did include, as requested, we included in the recommended budget $60,000 for grant match monies, for possible grants that may come up. The conversation ensued around Baton Park and different opportunities that lie there, so that we would have those grant match monies for that or other uses in the budget. It's on the first page. Or page 2 for you.
And you're currently working on CDBG grant for the Baton Park, correct?
Yes, I am. I have the application on my desk. It is due the 21st of June, and I'm going to have to work very diligently and a lot of extra hours. It's going home with me at night to get that done. We can, it's a 10% match. Well, if we do some other things, if I get some other, it depends on, if you have certified, signed estimates, et cetera, the match changes, so it's from 5 to 10%. I can ask for up to $750,000. Minimum amount I could ask for is $500,000. I'd like to make sure that I have all my ducks in a row to ask for the $750,000, but I have to have an architect or an engineer give me a certified cost. So that would be the key point, whether or not I can pull that off, but I'm having those conversations now. So I'm going to do my very best to make sure that I can ask for the full amount. So I know that 60 doesn't cover all of that, but there's also perhaps some in kind that we could use along with that. It doesn't have to be solely cash. So I'm going to try to be as creative as I can, but also I want to make sure that we submit a solid application, because I know that it's important.
Thank you for that.
Do we have, so we had talked about $50,000 to $75,000 to get the immediate needs at the pavilion taken care of, the 2 parking places and a ramp and that sort of stuff. Is that budgeted somewhere in here?
Not in here. So we're still, yes.
It's going to be somewhere in this document?
What we were waiting for is to find out what that was, and that was in my email this morning. I haven't had a chance to look at it to tell you what that amount is. So that is something that hopefully we could address. That's what I would like to address. If I can get that amount to you and get it to you in time to look for the preliminary budget, you could include it then. Or worst case scenario, you could definitely include it in the final budget. So, like I said, it's in my email. I haven't had a chance to look at it. And just remember that you're going to have 2 options. Is it a walk-in or a drive-in? And I can tell you that's going to make a substantial difference in the cost. He made that very clear. So I'll look at that as soon as we're done with this and get that to you. I'll have Linda factor it in and see where that plays in. But we typically place that in a capital projects fund.
So,
or maybe we could.
But in talking to Linda, we do have some money that can be used for some improvements there.
Right, so there may be some in the current budget that's left in that we have currently budgeted, so I just need some time to look at that and see if there's a way that, so yes, there is some funding that is in, but we're trying to scramble around and still get the courthouse finished, and we've encountered some other leaking walls there, but yes, I do believe that we have some that we can at least address that. But I just have to have the time to look at it and see what we have left.
Okay. When does the CDBG, when do we know the results of that?
They usually award those in August. So it was anywhere from August to October. I couldn't tell you. I didn't look at that. I just know I have to have it in by June. The others were just increase in liability insurance. She explained that we usually typically budget about a 10% increase in the liability insurance. There's some decreases in workers' comp. That's just based on employees, etc. There is under the requested, there was a request to increase or to include the $150,000, which was allocated to the commissioners in the past. So that was a request. We did not include that in the recommended. I'll let you discuss that. The other item that there's been some discussion around, and I wasn't doing it to be nasty, I just out of curiosity asked the university to provide me some information on the golf course. as to, memberships, how many rounds are played, et cetera.
Well, and the reason that you have to say not doing it to be nasty.
Well, I know it sounds wrong, but I didn't want you to think that I'm trying to cause an argument. I just was looking for sake of information because I was curious myself, because I've been hammered by several of you of why are we doing that? Well, I wanted to be able to tell you why I think why we should do that.
Thank you.
The thing that jumped off the page at me was the number of retiree memberships is substantially higher than anything else, and considering that Grant County has the second highest percentage of the aging population in the state, I thought that was kind of important. The other thing is when you have conversation with lodgers and in conversation with folks like Charmaine Waite, when you try to bring people to the community, the goal is to bring them here for a minimum of 3 days. You have to have enough for them to do for 3 days. And that was, a lot of rules of thumb is, a lot of people do play golf. And if it's an extra possible way to keep them in town for that extra day, this is a tool. So yeah, I was just mainly curious what did it generate, and so that is from January through May of this year were the stats that they provided me. So I just wanted to make sure I shared that with you.
No, I thank you for that. I mean, so out of all this, and I mean, I golf, my son, I can't get him off the golf course, but I understand all this, but how much of that, does anybody know how much of that comes back into the county?
I couldn't tell you how much directly comes back into the county. I don't know if there's any way to do that. The other thing I look at is when the group that had that golf course went bankrupt, it was a partnership between the city, the county, and the university that said, what do we do to save this and keep it in our community? And so short of anything else, we try to be good partners. We try to work with each other to accomplish things countywide. And it's just one of the things that we committed to, and I hate to just throw that away and say, sorry, we can't come up with $25,000 out of our $10 million budget to continue to be that partner. So I find that, in my job, I look at ways that we can work with others, and this is just one of those examples. But I just wanted to make sure that you saw that, and short of saying that in a really bad way, I didn't want it to come across that, look, but I was curious myself as to what it is that is coming out of that, and so I was hoping that would be helpful.
And I understand what you're saying, working with others and doing that, and I think the golf course is great. I just think that sometimes, we're struggling here with certain things and being told we don't have money for this, we don't have money for that, we can't do this, but then all of a sudden, nobody's able to answer my question yet as far as how much money is coming into Grant County, because it seems that sometimes the discussions are, well, does it bring money into the county? So now I'm trying to figure out, okay, so we have $25,000 just to give away. And, we've heard all these department heads. I mean, it's not about the golf course. It's not about the people that use it. It's not about who's running it. To me, it's about, where can we use $25,000 elsewhere?
I understand. And to be able to track that, it's extremely difficult to say that I know that this $25,000 brings X amount of dollars back in. I can look at Rogers tax. It's up a little bit this year, but does that have anything to do with the golf course? Does it have to do with the Blues Fest? Does it have to do with the Tour of the Gila? Does it have to do with whatever particular bird is in the area at the time? I can't do that. And unfortunately,
I'm not asking you to do it because that would take.
The other part is the way that GRT is reported in the state, to be able to extrapolate any kind of useful data out of the reports that we do get is virtually impossible. It's a self-reporting state, so you have no idea who contributed to what. Retail is up in the city. Our GRT is up, but it's kind of up in all different areas, so we can't pinpoint why is it up. Does the construction play a part of that? Do we have more people in the community? But because we can't go and say who,
Right.
It's really hard to come up with anything.
Don't think that I'm expecting you to, I don't want
I
to
would
come
love
up
to
with.
be able to do that, and it's just
That's
kind of like this shotgun approach. Well, we think it could be this, and we think it could be that, and so it's really hard, and I wish that we had a way to really drill down on that data, but we don't. It's frustrating.
Yeah, no, I agree with that.
So there's a piece of this that should be much more direct. I wasn't even going to try to ask you those kinds of questions. But when I see something on here, it says retiree memberships that you mentioned, there's a number there, but that's not a dollar figure. Those memberships presumably are paid to WNMU now, since WNMU operates the golf course?
That's correct.
So, do we have a sense of whether WNMU is profiting and at the same time the city and the county are paying in?
I don't have direct proof of that, but in conversations with Dr. Shepherd, I don't believe they're making any profit. I think one of the key pieces for them to keep a golf course operational is they have a golf team. Silver High School has a golf team. It was incorporated, but I don't know that they make a profit. I can't answer that question. I can ask him. I don't know what
I
answer.
would also assume that they don't.
I would suspect not,
But similar to what we grappled with at the Regional Dispatch Authority, and what we continue to grapple with in a number of different partnerships is this a fair allocation of costs? Right. That's really the essential question. I don't know that anybody has the information, which is frustrating to me. Like Silver, how uses it? Do they contribute some share of the cost of running the thing? Western obviously uses it both for their team, and I think Dr. Shepherd said it's an important part of recruitment, right? He wants to be able to recruit professors, and some of them care about having a golf course, so that's useful to them. City obviously puts in a lot, they value it. We put in less than they do. But who's getting the revenue from these things? $169,000 in food and beverage sales. Is that all going to Western? I don't know how this works.
So, I don't know that, what is their profit? This was a very quick thing that I asked them to put together. This is what they came up with. We can always ask them for, much more detailed financials.
Seems like it's worth it.
I just thought this was a good start.
This is a good start.
And it's I know that, the hospital physicians find it helpful to have they like to play golf. I know that that's part of one of the things that, they sell. Realtors talk about, yes, we have a golf course, those sort of things. It's a quality of life issue too. But anyway, it's just, I wanted you to see, this is what they gave me when I asked for. I just wanted some information that would substantiate any kind of financial contribution.
Thank you. I just wonder if you could then continue the investigation and see what more we can learn about how this partnership is structured financially. So, whatever, so we feel better about the part that we're contributing.
Yes. Well, as far as economic development goes, I see that every activity that we have here in the county, the Blues Festival, all the stuff that's here in Silver and other places, that puts people in our motels and in our cafes and all that. But it's not just WNMU. And I'm a golfer myself, and I really respect what it brings. And maybe it's not a tangible thing that we can put your finger on, and you can drill down and say, well, they contributed this much to our gross receipts tax. But I just think there's other things. Mr. Turrieta there can validate that I say that when they have a tournament with seniors, it fills up. And those are usually 3-4 day events. I've seen when they have events for the younger teams, the USSSA and tournament teams. There's other events that could come in. Bowling leagues. I think that maybe we need to, if we're really serious, we need to expound on that and maybe have somebody help out with those things. If we can put some money into just for this, maybe can we help maybe get with leaders of some of these activities and have as much as they're doing now, or maybe more, to help them to bring people into our county. So instead of just golf, can we do that for other things, knowing that it's going to be a hard thing to put, this is what it brought to us. But they do bring, the car shows that they have and stuff in Hurley and Western and Silver, those bring in a lot of people. I mean, there's so many activities that bring in people, and I could see possibilities of more things coming in. I can see Baton being used for a lot of things that way.
So one thing I also think is important to consider is that it isn't just about attracting people from outside. It is about quality of life issue for people who live here. Having Baton Park, the fairgrounds, the ball fields, the golf course, all those things are things that the libraries, all of those things are things that we have to consider our quality of life issues for people who already live here as well, in addition to what you're talking about.
And that's my perspective as well. And I would include the shooting range. Right? There's another.
Sure.
There's another
So many people use that thing.
And that's because it's providing a service to our residents. And I love the fact that we're grappling with this, because we've just ignored it for a couple of years. So now we're actually grappling with it. What are the relative importances in budget terms of these different activities?
And are they quantifiable or
I
not?
mentioned the library, because I
I know, I'm-
librarian, right? If I'm wanting somebody to move to community, being able to have a library that offers activities for my children, that's really important to me. Maybe not to everybody, but we've been giving them zero.
Well, and one thing I would say about that is, having recently done some events at the Baird Library for kids specifically, that is critically important. What the Baird Library is doing on Fridays when Cobra schools are not in session is critically important.
And they have a lot of activities during the summer too. I was surprised at the use of the public. They have computers in there for people to use and stuff, and some of these things are quality of life things that can't be measured in just plain dollars and cents.
There were 2 kids that came down to the library the morning I was there in their pajamas with their hair sticking straight up. They went right from home to the library.
So Linda said we just got their request yesterday for the Baird Library, so we would definitely put that in for the final budget.
That's what I just got it, and I showed it to Commissioner Edwards. About the Baird Library requesting that.
And that's, of course, not the only library that county residents use.
Right.
I think I was quoted in the papers talking about Gila in Silver City also.
Silver City is huge.
There's a lot of folks who come out from county and still use Silver City Library.
There's people from the mining area that come to the library when they have some of their real books and stuff like that they do here. So I guess where I'm going is that it would probably be great if we could find somebody within the county to maybe look at issues like this for economic development. Because they will bring, I think it's important enough to have somebody look at it.
Well, aren't we those people? Well, I think you're missing something. I think that's exactly what we're doing now.
As we have maintenance, as we have, maybe call it a recreation department.
You have a
dedicated staff member that, Mr. Tureta with the senior league can come in and say, hey, we'd like to have a tournament, and we're going to have 10 teams that are going to come in from out of town. Can we do something together? How can we do this? Or can a person from here say, hey, this is a county-supported thing? As you say, quality of life. There used to be a lot of activities from kids to grown-ups. Softball tournaments, basketball, tennis. There was a lot of things that people would do that are gone now.
So I love the momentum here. I love the direction this is taking. I've had discussions with our county manager about this. I think that is exactly what I would like to see, a person in charge of what I would call county recreation. Yes. Right? It encompass parks and trails and libraries. And I would like to fund that with part of what we're anticipating getting from the wind farm. And I proposed that when we had the wind farm idea, and I think there were competing proposals, but that money hasn't come in yet. But I think it behooves us to think ahead. So when it will come in, what do we want to do with it?
And remind me, how much is going to come into our county?
My recollection is $220,000 a year.
I agree with
Charlene's
what you
nodding.
guys are saying.
So that would be a piece of it, right? One staff member with benefits, I don't know what that means, 70,000, something like that.
But yeah, county parks and rec is, yeah, I agree. And how, I would further say that, how can we partner with the town of Silver City and, Baird, Hurley, and Santa Clara, and on a bigger vision of what that parks and rec idea is? Because it's going to benefit everybody, and everybody has amenities to share.
And we want to tie together and coordinate so we don't have events at the same time. And yeah. Thank you for pursuing that.
Thank you.
So on that 25, can I go back up to that 150 there was sort of what was my idea, right? So just to let you know what my idea was that, commissioners have different districts that we're from and what we need to try to support. So what I had done is I had thought of, and I know in the past they had a contingency fund there for the Grant County Commissioners. My whole idea was on that is to split up the money for the commissioners to be able to do certain things in their districts, of course, following procurement code, following county manager's recommendations and even their finance director's recommendations, so we don't violate any laws while doing it. I didn't anticipate this money to start a phase 1 project and then go next year to a phase 2 because we don't know where the budget's going to be next year. So I was just hoping that it would be something for our county commissioners to look into the district to see where some of this money could be used. And, maybe fix something, add something, do whatever they felt that they needed done with it. That was my whole plan behind that. And then I started hearing one of the commissioners or with that, whatever, okay, that's fine. I can understand that. But now sitting up here and hearing what our hourly employees are in our mid-range and certain things that we have and trying to catch up with the sheriff's department, trying to get our hourly employees where they need to be, I think that was a bad idea on my part, seeing now that I'm seeing the whole picture of the county and looking at, and which it wasn't even put in a recommendation, but anyway, that, to me, if it was going to go, that money right there could be used for other things that we're faced with. So that was my thing on that 150, but I see that we're really, not already employees, they're not even at mid-range, and that I think we can spend it better, in better places. I can move on, and I'm hardly cool with that.
Thanks, Chris. Good. Thank you.
So, were you done? You said what? I did have a question. You've almost surely answered this before. The agricultural agent of line, that is not the same as the tailored raising fees, right? Because they're in a whole separate fund.
That's a part of refund. This is the extension office. So,
It's our contribution to the county
contribution to the county extension office.
Thank you for that reminder.
And just for your knowledge, learning knowledge, extension is funded 3 ways, local, state, and federal. So it's 3-pronged, and if you look at their 2 triangles, that's what it stands for. They receive federal money, state money, and then local.
Is it 1/3, 1/3, 1/3?
No. Goodness sakes, no, we couldn't afford to 1/3.
Okay. Yeah.
Federal's most.
Federal's most, okay.
Our unemployment insurance looks like it's gone from 7,600 to almost 10,000 to this year. I'm projecting forward maybe 15,000, and we're budgeting 25,000. What's up with that?
That's just based off of the invoicing that they're giving us. They're back, I think, about a year behind in claims. Just getting those invoices from the other.
So you're over budgeting to
Cover the backlog.
to be sure that we have enough to cover the backlog. That's what you're saying. Okay.
On unemployment claims, are we challenging some of them, or do we have somebody that's doing the hearings and
Yes, so we do, we challenge the majority of those, and we have, it's through association accounts, but we have a person that works on our behalf for that. And so, we'll say, yes, we want to challenge that one, and we send all the documentation, and they act as that hearing officer for us if it goes to that point. But we have won several of those that, and, if it's someone deserves it, we absolutely don't challenge it, but we do most of them.
Those are all the specific line items I have. You guys are going to go home, think about things, come back for the final. You've just got a request from the Baird Library, it sounds like. If we had other libraries in there, my thought was sort of on parity with golf course, maybe 25,000. And I've already been through this question about the clerk's special election line. If we're looking for a place to fund that, that's where I would look. That's the one thing that has jumped out to me today that is cushion that we don't need.
funded from where?
From the clerk's, actually it's the Bureau of Elections, Department 05, where there's 25,000 in increased expenses, but nothing in increased fees. And my understanding of the law is that we will be able to collect our expenses through those fees. And my understanding of the cash flow is that we'll be starting with a payment from Silver Consolidated so that we don't need to build the cash flow in, it will be there.
Right.
So that would be where I would find that particular money.
We're still on the 401, we're still on the top right.
Yeah. So when Department 01.
There you go.
01. In the manager's budget, under full-time salaries, there's an increase there. That is a 25% increase that I had in the works for Kevin before he moved to the accounting specialist, and now he came back. It was an increase in job duties and responsibilities. We eliminated a position that was for Randy Diaz, so he does those duties in addition to he'll be responsible for being our webmaster, our updater, taking care of our website, which we're nearly there, 2 years later.
And how much is that in a salary increase?
It's a 25% increase.
And we had discussed that pretty thoroughly prior to him moving into the other office,
Yes,
right?
we did.
Because I remember talking about him taking over responsibility for the stuff in Randy's office, which is all the rental stuff and all that clerical stuff. So Randy doesn't have a clerk anymore, right?
No.
In his office. Kevin is doing that job.
Yes.
Okay.
So,
That's an efficiency thing.
I don't remember discussing it, but
I think that was prior to.
It was
It was last
it was
fall.
like early.
Yeah. Kevin went over to the accounts job in
Yeah, that was
October or something.
But we're filling the comp stuff.
Yes, that's still filled. We still run as Steve's employees again. That's one of Steve's temporary employees is now the accounting person. We have an increase in...
So what are we going to do if Steve doesn't have that temporary job that we can steal his help all the time?
Well, yeah, Stephanie was there. We stole Stephanie from Steve. Lisa stole Stephanie from us. Now we stole Sam from Steve, and Steve's given up. So increase in telephone, that's just based on, why did that go up so much? Remind me, refresh my memory.
Remember we did some readjustments on the telephone costs, and we were just kind of going with the ballpark figure last year because we were lumping into different departments and we were just taking it out from certain departments into the maintenance, and last year I decreased it too much.
Yeah, so our telephone was all lumped into this one big mess, and so now it's being allocated, and yeah, we've been doing that. The equipment maintenance, and the non-capital, equipment is for the timekeeping, the time clocks, and then also, we're doing, Linda mentioned the total content manager, for our office it's basically scanning, so that we can be more efficient and scan our documents. So, our AT will have all the documents attached to that check rather than we have to go and dig through files, and it's just to bring things more efficiently. Also have that stuff more readily available, when it's, we have requests.
So that's not maintenance, that's actual new equipment? Okay.
It includes the maintenance cost.
It's all lumped, and we can separate it out just for sake of getting the cost in there.
Right, so, I'm sorry, I'm just a little behind here. So wouldn't, if it's equipment and maintenance, some of it would go in capital outlay, right?
Yeah, some of it, so we just lumped it into that.
Okay, but you'll split it out.
Okay. That includes all the costs to do all of those things. And we did our training, been trying to send staff to more training, so that they're able to, stay more current on their jobs. And so we increased that 1,000 to try and cover that and send them to as much as we can send them to. That's it.
So one thing that I would like to talk a little bit more about is training budgets. And maybe this is just, part of our longer term goal setting or planning, for the future, but I would really like to, excuse me, I would like to see proposals from department heads for annual training budget. And the reason I'm saying proposal is because I'd like to know what they're proposing. But one of the things that I think is really important when we're talking about things like, salary increases and job satisfaction and all that sort of stuff, and efficiency for the county and blah, 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 blah. Professional development is an important part of that. And, like Harry is clearly an expert at finding places where money can be found, as he demonstrated by this. But, maybe there are some, maybe there's a little bit more where we can put a little bit more training into each budget, into each department. Just like to see training budgets.
I have a question. Assuming there's one more discussion on that item. I think you passed over the $10,000 increase in non-capital equipment.
Yep, that was going to be my next question. So good, I'm glad you asked that.
Part of the 10 o'clock.
So the maintenance is more than the purchase?
Actually, we had part of the decision.
Probably upfront, because it's we'll look at it, that's probably a little check on that, but it was pretty costly for the first year.
The total, what is it called? Total what?
Total content manager.
Total content manager. So that is equipment and software that is going to do document management? Is that what it is?
Yes, what it's going to provide is a tablet for us to be able to scan all these documents into the Tyler system that we already have. So whenever there's a check issued, so right now it's all filed with all the backup documentation of this check. It will allow us to scan all of the documents together. Pretty much it would work like this, the PDF documents that the clerk's office has. And not only checks, we can scan whatever we would like to contracts. And it would make it easy for our office, especially when we get these requests for public information. Because right now we have to dig into files years back, and this would allow us to be able to just have it readily available whenever we need it.
So if somebody prints something, you would be able to search the documents and just say, push a button and print it.
I was going to equate it to exactly how the system in the clerk's office works. It's just a matter
I think it eliminates a lot of room, not for error, but it keeps everything together. If you come in and you would want a certain check and everything that happened with that, she can literally press a button instead of saying, hey, I gotta research this, give me a day or two and I can get back to you. She can literally hand it to you as you walk out.
So do you think that well, obviously you must think this, but from your perspective, having used a system like this, in your experience, does it cut down on the amount of time your employees are handling paper? Because, sometimes, people say, oh yeah, computers are going to make your life easier, and then you print more paper, and
technically the way that it works now, what we do, it's going to be completely...
Does it make your office more efficient?
It makes it way more efficient, and it leaves a lot of room for, there's less room for error, I should say, and efficiency not only for their office and their employees, but for you guys and the public. If the public comes in and needs something, I'm assuming, I'm not really sure what it is, but if it works like ours, you have everything in front of you and you track what was done. So if you ask me what happened with this document, I can tell you when it hit my office, what time we recorded it, it has a home, basically. You're giving these documents a home and you're getting rid of all the files or separate files that everything goes into, and you're putting it all in an electronic form.
So we might have,
Is it stored off-site?
It's cloud-based.
Cloud-based, okay.
So, you could have everything in one place. You could pull up a check and you would have the contract that's assigned to that, you would have all the POs that are assigned to that, you would have all the invoices that were assigned to that, and now we have to look in 3 different places to go and find all of those things. So mainly the reason that I proposed it was I get a little frustrated on how efficient that our office operates, and to me this just makes, I would rather them be doing things that are a little more important than digging through filing cabinets than we might. Not file them back properly, or then the auditor shows up, we can't find it, and it's just...
So is this something, so clerk's office has something like that? Does the treasurer's office or the assessor's office have something like this?
No.
And is it something that could be expanded to the offices that don't have it? Because it seems to me like all of the offices in the county are really paper intensive. And so if this total content management is something that works for the manager's office, is it a system that could be expanded so that the assessor and the treasurer's office had access to it?
I'm really not sure, because this one is specifically for the in-code system, and the assessor and the treasurer are either legal. You guys don't have something similar to that already?
No, the only thing we do is we actually have individual scanners when we scan all the information, our documents, our property record cards. That's the only thing that we're doing
And you don't have a formal content manager type thing?
Where is it stored?
It's actually stored in the servers in the back.
Okay, so it's basically the same thing, because it'll be stored in a server with the rest of our servers back now. So it's pretty basically the same thing. And the other thing that I'd like to add to it is that...
They don't need to join ours.
I think so.
The efficiency of the department would really be great, because we have to submit a lot of reimbursements on these grants. And right now it just takes us a lot of time to have to go and dig all the checks, everything is attached to the check. Sometimes we even have to get information from the treasurer's office. So it would really benefit our department.
So Linda, if I understand, this system will not only keep time cards, eliminate those, and it's going to be electronic, but also it's going to store all the documents that you guys need. So I've been through this before, so your initial contract, are they somebody physically going to come into the office and scan a year back, 2 years back, or how is that going to be?
No, we're just going to proceed forward from the time that we purchased this module for Titan. I don't see the need to have to go back and...
Because you don't know what people are going to request.
Correct. But if we move forward, that'd be great. So we'll just start from that.
I love electronic. I love saving it on the cloud because, I've been for server crashes and you lose information. So on the cloud is great. So.
And there are 4 time clocks in this proposal. Is that what I recall?
Correct.
And where are they going?
One in the sheriff's office, one in the road department, one in the detention center, and one in the facility.
Okay.
So, before we move on to the next item, that's what I was going to ask. Commissioner Salas, do you have anything to add?
Did we go over IT?
Oh, we did not.
Okay, because I have a real concern on IT.
Do you want to go over?
Give me a page.
Page 7.
We'll let Linda go over it since she works with the schedule.
The IT department really did ask for much increase other than a salary increase. You can see that on the recommended budget, the increase for
The requested budget.
yes, I'm sorry. Along with, of course, with the benefits. The maintenance contracts was also an increase due to there was going to be some cost increase in the Adobe software that we have right now, and with the Gmail, the mail that we have with Google, and it's per user, so she did ask for increases in there. And that's about it. And there was a decrease in $60,000 in capital outlay, but that's due to all the servers that we purchased last year. We did some major upgrades to the equipment in the IT department last fiscal year. So that's where that increases, but if you would like to continue to upgrade certain equipment such as computers and things of that nature, and printers and things that they need to be done throughout the year. But really, only the request was in salary.
Okay, well, my concern is that it's like having a sole provider. It's a department of one. And I know that there is, so I guess it's the computer support. So if something happens, somebody can come support her, but that computer support isn't local?
Correct. We have a contract with an outside provider that they're here on site 1 week a month and also can log in remotely just like she does whenever she's off site at any point in time. So we have her plus them that provide our IT support.
Well, I was just wondering,
5167.
I just find it maybe sort of rational to have somebody else in that office. A tech that can, do all the desktops and all the tablets and all that, because computers, the systems, they're getting more complicated. Okay, and I think that we should be spending a lot of time on making sure that we're current. And not only that, this spyware that comes in, I don't know if you've ever had, companies that crash and then they've had to pay ransoms, through the ransomware and all that, and I know that can become very, very expensive. I know that's happened. I
City
think-
of Baltimore hasn't been able to bill or collect for 3 weeks.
Atlanta, the whole city of Atlanta got hit. So, yeah, we've seen it happen, but I'm surprised. I thought you were thinking the other direction. You're thinking that we should actually add a new staff person.
I think we should have some way to have somebody else support here, because I'm certain that our IT person, she has vacation time, or she's going to get sick, something might happen, and she will be gone, for more than a day. And what does the county do? If a personal computer, a desktop goes down or something, Mr. Turrieta's working on something, boom, he loses it. Who's going to come immediately and fix it? I just think that when you rely on a sole person for a critical job, it's not a very sane idea.
This must already have happened.
We've had this position for a while. She takes vacations, yes?
We try to schedule, his name's Bernie Huntress, who comes in from our contract provider. We try to schedule his time here, whenever she is on vacation. When times that she's off, she does log in remotely just as he does, at any point in time when we need him. So, I understand where you're coming from. I've actually, over the last, 4 years, tried to get some data, to justify whether or not that's necessary on how time is spent, and I had a difficult time getting, an idea of hours spent on what you talked about as, computer upgrades, or, I want to be able to justify it before hiring someone. I haven't quite got that data that makes me comfortable to make that recommendation at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I guess from my perspective, we're not such a large organization that we would need a 2-person IT department. I think 1-person IT departments are pretty common in small organizations. And I understand the vulnerability you're pointing out, but
I've seen a lot smaller with more people that, IT departments are usually, there's somebody taking care of your servers, your programs and stuff, and then there's the IT person that takes care of, the labor intensive, the laptops,
the hardware stuff.
Yes, the stuff when updates and stuff, they go install.
And that's primarily what Angela does.
yeah, and she does it
She does
in a
everything.
smart way, remotely, but she doesn't have to go touch your computer.
A lot more of the server stuff is what Ernie does.
Well, even at home, she does this, you know what I mean, we gotta give her credit, it's not just only she gets on it takes time from her family too. I'm not saying either way, but.
I think she's been accommodating us, but so there's going to be situations when that can't be done, She catches the bad case of the flu, it turns into pneumonia, she's going to be in that hospital for a while, and her accommodating us won't be possible. I'm just thinking that we really ought to look at somebody for IT support.
Well, I think we have a contractor. Your choices, it seems to me, are someone junior, whom you could afford, but whom you wouldn't trust with taking over if she got pneumonia, or a contract, the cost of which might go way up if we had to fill in a big way. But a contract with an expert.
To be able to really discuss this, I think that we need her to see exactly what happens,
Well,
because look at all the departments that she handles, all the different locations. Corrections, which is going to be a monster unto itself, and this building, the convention center, our maintenance offices, and so it's not a small area, because it's so widespread. So maybe being able to question her.
yeah.
What is her title?
IT coordinator.
And the increase in full-time salaries that was requested but not recommended, was that to add a position, or was that to reclassify hers?
That's the salary she requested. She requested to be titled as an IT director. And doing my research there to look at what technically an IT director does, and technically they have numerous staff items from what I can discover at this point. And I had a big problem with that being a higher amount than any other director we have that's been here for close to 30 years. I didn't agree with that figure. It's a little high. That's more than any of our directors.
When was the last time she had an increase?
She received,
And I'm not talking about the 1.5.
No, I can't get in. She received a $10,000 increase, that was $10,000 during the interim between John Sari and when I came on in 2014. She received about, it was right at $10,000 then. And I'm not sure that was done under an interim manager. I can't speak to it. I'm assuming under some of that conversation, but.
Okay. We'll just have to look at the other, I guess the other people that want to turn on.
Not this one.
Okay, well, those are my questions then.
So, I mean, okay, other than what we discussed, do you have any other comments concerning the budget?
No, I'd just like to know when we're going to meet back. Okay, because say this is approved and it goes in, right?
29th.
So this is the interim budget. And when we're going to come back and be specific.
We don't take any action today,
Right, to the 29th.
the 29th.
Why is that not in my calendar? The 29th should be in
I
here.
believe so, it's the 29th, right? Yes. Should be there. 29th we come in, and that's when we'll take action. It goes to, the preliminary budget will go up to the DFA, and then from there we have, because in reality, we don't even know what our ending cash balance is yet, so there can be some room for adjustments or whatever we need to do to get in a final budget by the end of
What's the
August.
final budget?
When is it due? It's due by August 1st. So I have
First.
pretty much the whole month of July to close out my books, try to get a final together within time to be able to submit.
Well, I think last year we met like on the July 29th or something like that. Yeah,
Close to the last
close to the
day.
last day, because we gotta figure out our final tilt and other things like that.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure, that we'll have the opportunity to adjust some of these things as we were talking about, maybe the recreation or something that we have questions or issues about, and we will. So we'll submit the preliminary budget, then we can come back. And again, for my education, will we meet at all to discuss this? Does this all have to be a public meeting, or is there anything that can be talked in executive session?
It's all public.
It's all public.
Okay. Well, this is a...
But we could have, in fact, I think we did have another budget hearing in July last year, once we had
Really?
final figures. That's what I recall.
I remember having a meeting, but not an actual full hearing.
But we can have as much discussion as we want.
And we could request that, for example, the IT coordinator be here for that, or not?
So at that hearing, can we change things that are in the budget?
Time limit. So yeah, you can make changes between preliminary and final when we meet on this in July.
Okay.
So, so from trying to get my dates here, so from the 29th, that's when action is taken, till probably the end of July,
We'll have a month to,
make changes, and probably even if we have to have another meeting, and we have 2 meetings, don't we?
We will have
we will have 4 meetings.
We'll have 4 meetings. You see, here we go, there goes 4 meetings for 8 hours.
No!
So any other comments, sir?
My last question is then, okay, we send the meeting, the budget off, and even the final one in August. And if need be, we can come back and adjust our budget.
That's good.
Commissioner Brown, do you have any comments, or?
No, I'm really happy with this discussion. I think we've really developed some understanding, and that was nice to see.
Commissioner Edwards?
Yeah, I really appreciated the discussion. I appreciate the preparation from county staff and elected officials and their willingness to come in and talk to us, and I think we had a great conversation. Thank you very much.
Yeah, for me, and I guess just talking about a little bit, looking at this budget, and I'm very big on development. I think Commissioner Edwards brought this up too. Our training budgets, I see that where they're at, 2,000, I don't know anymore nowadays. The majority of them are at 2,000, and I think it's probably more of a discussion for down the road to discuss what our elected officials, what our departments heads want as far as their training, what they envision their people. But I think as we go down this road, not only just because it's budget, but we go down this road through this year, I think we need to look at certain things and where we're headed and go from there. But I really appreciate it, again, the department heads and the elected officials, and very well put together. Thank you. Linda, thank you. And that's it. And then I guess we got a lot of thinking to do from here to next Thursday.
Mr. Chair, I move that we adjourn.
And I accept that. I second that.
Second, third, and fourth.
And all those in favor, I guess? Aye. Motion carries. Have a good rest of your day.
Yeah.